Hello, welcome to Plat Chat, episode 43. Today is an incredibly serious episode because we know who's heading to Iceland from NA and EU. But also today's not a very serious episode because we've got this dumb idiot on the show still. So,
what are you talking about? You're
Wow,
no. You're the one.
shots.
No, I won't even. I'm not even gonna engage. In fact, I'm stoic because I spell esports the right way, like on your shirt, and so we have to talk about this very seriously.
this is just a comfy shirt, mate. I want to take a moment though to say that you are just huffing copium. We're on the episode talking about the teams that made it to Iceland, and you've got NVTV in the background. Like,
I
they
had
can
to
still
do
make
a
it, guys.
recording. I had to do a recording.
You have to do a Plat Chat recording right now.
And then I didn't want to move it because I haven't made the bed. Okay, and then you'll see what a disaster it is back there, right? Okay, because I had to do this collegiate tournament all throughout the weekend, so I have a bunch of outfits laid out on the bed that haven't been moved yet. And then on top of that, I saw Envy lose, and then I rolled around on the ground and I cried. Okay, I did all those things, right? That's totally me. That's what I do.
Caboose was going to take
day.
you for dinners in Iceland, wasn't he?
I don't know.
Yeah.
So this wasn't a
Caboose,
demand. It wasn't a demand from Hastro. The higher ups came down and said,
Hastro
"Avast,
pulled
you're
up
getting a
in
lot
the
of viewers there on that
Envy
Plat
branded
Chat show."
outside my house. He walked up to the door. He had the Envy Secret Service flanking him on both sides, and they opened it up. And he's like, "You have to put the backdrop up for Plat Chat." Okay, we've suffered a great embarrassment, and I was like, "Okay." I'll put it up.
You've been able to fraternize at all? All the Envy guys were down there. I mean, I know you and Caboose, you guys love each other, but you, like, I don't know, Victor maybe.
I haven't actually had a chance to talk with the
FNS,
rest of them
Sack,
yet.
you guys hang
I
out
might
at
be because most of my work's still done from home. We're not going back into the office full time until July. is when we
I've
start
just
going back to
realized,
the office.
are you calling FNS the sack?
No,
Who are you calling the sack?
FNS.
FNS. because you're saying his name. Are you saying because his name is Fat Nutsack? Is
That's
that
not his name.
No, I know that's not his name. I'm not saying that is his name. I'm trying to get to the bottom of why you're calling him the sack.
It's just his nickname.
Why is it his nickname?
I don't know. You'd have to ask Avast.
I made that nickname up in the last co-stream I was at.
You'd
I
have
was
to
like,
ask Avast about that
yeah.
one.
Right. Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. How was your week, Balla? Have you been more sane than Avast has?
Yeah, I installed a wine cellar, so plenty of, fancy shit going down.
Yeah, nice of you to rejoin us. Nice. He's got a fucking
Grigio.
castle back there for his cat. I mean, of course the man's got a wine cellar. He's probably got a milk cellar for the cat as well. Just the cat taps
That
in.
sounds like a great idea, actually. I have plenty of space, so yeah, milk cellar.
I
next.
would be disturbed if I walked into someone's home and they had a milk cellar. I would be like, why do you have so much milk on the premises?
If you could drink like old vintage wine, then why can't your cat, enjoy
Drink
something
old
like that
vintage
too?
milk?
Yeah, there's quite a different
It won't
shelf
work.
life for wines versus dairy products.
If you were a dairy
maybe
farmer,
like dry milk. I don't know. No, but actually, I think I've reached boomer status, like full on boomer status. I got kicked out of the house on last Wednesday because of pest control, like Avast or some shit. And then I treated my lawn yesterday, and I'm hella sore. So full on boomer status.
Sorry, you did
Treated
what to your
my
lawn?
lawn.
You
I treated it.
You gave it a fade.
Like
Nice little cut.
a fade, and then
Yeah,
you like
give
put the pest shit out, then you put the fertilizer out and the seeding out and shit like that. Cause yeah,
I never had to.
it's not like taking the lawn out to a date.
Josh, you have a lawn.
I know I have a lawn. I've never treated my lawn. I've never treated it to a nice dinner and a fucking night out or something.
You never tried to, I don't know,
New what?
I don't know, water it. New grass.
Do I even know anything about lawns?
It rains,
Do I
man.
know anything about lawns?
It rains. No, all right, okay. This week was kind of nutty. There was a bunch of shit going down. I want to explain to the fans what we're doing today because I know that Vision Strikers lost, New Turn's going to LAN, the Japanese team qualified, Crazy Raccoons, Brazilian stuff's going on right now. We ain't going to talk about it, okay? We're not talking about it because we're going to do those next week. This week, we're going to focus on NA and EU because if we talk about everything, we're actually going to be here for 7 hours.
Yeah, there's no way.
We just simply can't.
Also, there's no way we could consume all of that.
Well, yeah, I mean,
it's
can't
just
watch all of that at once.
There's no way.
So we're going to do that in the future week. So this week is North America and Europe. It's the two regions that most people are talking about anyway, so I think that makes sense. And we'll tank our viewership in future weeks when we go on to talk about regions where no one's paying attention. So
well, then we can do a power ranking too, and viewership will go right back up. So
you're a genius. You are a content genius, Balla. But I wanted to start with some news because we were molding about it last week. Vanity said that he was excited about it. But at the end of the day, Riot got in touch with the pros, asked them what they thought, and Breeze is no longer in Iceland. It's not part of the map pool. Thoughts, feelings?
I mean, it's for the best.
That's it. That's your response.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can go on to the next segment. I mean, the technical difficulties.
I
don't know if that was us just cutting the episode because that's going to be our.
That's the end of the show.
It's like, it was okay. Move on.
I have no idea how that's going to look. I've never accidentally done that before.
Who knows?
I don't know. We can't. We just can't.
We can't even see anything.
I mean, it's just for the best, right?
Yeah.
It's the most fair thing. Specifically, it's most fair to the Brazilian teams who, for some reason, are still playing. Because they had 17 open qualifying opportunities.
Yeah, Brazil and LATAM finish on May the 9th.
Right, yeah, LATAM as well. So
they have a full week less to look over Breeze.
So unfair for those teams. Yeah, that's the right move.
Oh, they said 4 weeks is not enough. I thought it was 3 weeks was the travel time or whatever.
I think they were stretching it.
They were fucking stretching it.
They were stretching it like, guys, we thought there would be like 4 weeks. They're trying to do but
I mean, they finished the tournament on May the 2nd. You had 21 days to that. May 23rd. It's on May 24th. So saying it's 4 weeks is like, yeah.
You're rounding up by a lot. You're rounding up by 5.
You're rounding up to the nearest week. You got your toes wet in that 4th week, and you're like, yeah, fuck it. You have the whole of the week. Yeah. There were some ideas about running a show match or something like that on it. I think that'd be really cool. Of having like maybe fans vote on who they want to see play an all-star match or something, and they play it before the grand finals. And obviously, if you make the grand finals, you are not going to be playing in it. They would use like the next best people. Sure. But I think that'd be really cool.
I think that'd be really cool because some of the fan favorites are going to get eliminated. They're not going to be in the fucking finals, and
definitely
everybody's gonna be like, "Where's Shazam or something? Tens is not here." And yeah, that's actually big viewership.
There's a little leak of a hot take from Balla as well.
Yeah.
That's we'll get into that one later on.
Already predicting Sentinels to be out early, huh?
Well, I'm not just saying a real prediction or anything like that. I'm just saying.
Okay.
Maybe that's my real feelings, but I'll put on the Booger jersey and it'll all be fine. So there's no problem. No, I mean, just genuinely, there are going to be teams, no matter who, like Tens or somebody from EU, like Scream. He's not playing it. Like anybody, it doesn't matter. There's going to be people left out of the grand final that will bring big viewership. That's the point. All right. So I think it'd be really, really cool and a missed opportunity if they don't do it.
Sure. I was
going to say, I'm actually like mixed feelings on it being removed because it already started. And I know I've been kind of vocal on not having a 6-map pool and not having Breeze at the map pool as well. But I was thinking about like the take about how everybody's like, there's no, like they're trying to rush maps out so that it actually gets into an acceptable 7-map pool state. And I was thinking about that. I'm like, well, it's kind of weird because Riot's like in a position where the hands were tied before they actually did this, I thought. So the fact they're listening completely contradicts this. But this idea that the game doesn't have maps and stuff like that. A lot of people actually look at Valorant and they watch a tournament, they watch First Strike or something like that, and it's like the same maps that they've been watching, and it's this like it's 3 or 4 of them, and they're just like, this game sucks. It doesn't have any maps. So I felt like that was like an idea for them to try to contradict that, and actually finally, when there is a new influx of a lot of new viewers, they're like, okay, there's new maps. It's not the same shit that we've been watching, you know. But yeah, this is just for the better. Just for the better. 6-map pools suck. Like, there's no way to counteract that. So competitive integrity, in my opinion, is much, much more important.
Yeah, impressive turnaround for sure. I mean, generally, I don't feel like Riot historically, when they made the decision, they're not just like, actually, never mind. Like, generally, Riot's kind of known as like, okay, we made the decision, we're going to go with it, and we're just going to roll with it. So I think them adapting is actually a pretty good sign for how flexible they're willing to be for the esports scene. Because that shows that they're going to be like, okay, we're going to make everything in tune here. We're not just going to have to roll out the new map. So, I mean, we'll wait for the $20 map pack DLCs coming out, and then everyone's map gated. You know, that's how they're gonna fix the map issue. But actually, it's a really cool thing though. That Breeze isn't gonna be there.
We actually had games that used to do that. By the way,
aren't there games that still do that? Doesn't Call of Duty still do that?
Probably.
I'm pretty sure COD still does.
That's
Any
terrible.
FPS game you can get on Origin will have that without a doubt. All Battlefield games, etc. Yeah, and I mean it just makes the next stage more interesting too. More incentive to actually tune into the qualifiers for the next stage if it gets played.
Yeah, it's a cool map. I've been enjoying playing.
Oh yeah, actually I got around to playing it a bit, and I think it's pretty solid. It's pretty fun.
Yeah,
that map is really, really good. That's why I'm so like excited now for stage 3. But it's still begs the question as well. There's still going to be a map or a 6-map pool in stage 3, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't really release details about what the veto system was going to be or anything, unless. And that's kind of what I'm still suggesting, that we go to the Sideshow method of just deleting a map and adding in Breeze so that the other one can get reworked.
Yeah. I don't really. I mean, whenever you don't have 7 maps in the game, there are always going to be uncomfortable periods where you have to muddle through, where you have like 4 maps and 6 maps where it's just a pain in the ass. I think it's just good that they didn't combine and sync up that most awkward of times with the largest event ever. I think that overlap is really, really unfortunate. They also, Riot, just this morning actually, announced Masters 3 to be happening in Berlin, right? They announced that it's going to be a live event happening there. I didn't get to watch the thing. Balla, you were watching the broadcast. It was like, it's essentially their media thing right before Reykjavik, right? Where they were announcing a bunch of different stuff based on, like, around Riot, but most of it's League of Legends based. Were there any other juicy details, Balla?
They basically mentioned like coaching slots are going to be available for Iceland. I don't know if that means that they're actually flying out coaches, or whether that's like some other, thing that they're doing for Reykjavik. But coaching slots are going to be allowed to be used at Reykjavik, which means any team with a coach might have, a little bit of extra help. They did say that it's like only specific periods. I didn't hear about that. I'm guessing it's like normal, like tac pause and before and after games. Yeah. But yeah, that's the
normal
other
for North America.
Yeah, exactly. Not normal for EU, but I think that the teams who are there anyways are already doing the normal thing.
That announcement as well.
It said 16 teams.
It did.
Do you spot that too?
I did. I just spotted that.
The little text. Yeah, 16 teams. How about that? That's good.
That is really good. I mean, that makes the most sense. I think they just couldn't do it this time. I'm sure they would have liked to do it this time. It's just that.
Oh, I'm sure they would have liked to get that sweet Turkey viewership into the finals, and now they can.
The EU viewership actually though wasn't bad for challenge
viewership
finals.
Is great.
The EU viewership was actually like a lot higher than I expected without Turkey being in there.
I'll tell you what helps is having the big name brand value though as well. Like just seeing in the finals, Fnatic, Liquid. That in itself does a lot to help. Versus, I mean, Ascend and Heretics just don't have that same reach. They don't have the pull.
Sure. Yeah. I think
there's the USB stick.
Can we just pause on that USB stick?
I'm telling you, it has the next agent on there. The winners get access to the next agent.
What is that supposed to be? Is that
the
supposed
trophy.
to be? That's the trophy.
Yeah, that is the trophy for Masters.
The pylon is the trophy here.
It really does.
How are they going to hoist this?
It is very gamer looking. It looks like a USB stick or a graphics card or possibly a vape.
Is it like how big? Do we have any dimensions of the pylon yet?
Like that big.
It's like that big. So it's going to look like you're hoisting a big crystal just with you.
Yeah, that trophy was pretty sick. At least it's unique.
Like it.
I like unique looking trophies. I don't like the ones that just look like a trophy.
Really? I like a good old fashioned, here's a gold cup trophy. You hold it by both sides.
Well, that's because you can just make a weekly award
sucker up there,
I think that's pretty weak and uncreative, to be honest.
Dude, we need to win a Masters event so that we can get that for a Wyatt Weekly Award.
Yeah, I mean that's conceivable. We can definitely do that. That's pretty easy, right? But we'll put that as a reasonable goal for Plat Chat to win the Masters.
Yeah, I don't know. I like creative trophies. I mean, I think they're sometimes hit or miss.
Yeah.
but I don't know. I think they're pretty cool.
I think give it a little bit more of a chance. Like the silk screen is not even on there. There's no colors or anything like that. Like it's just literally a 3D model of.
Right.
Maybe it glows like the clear top. Maybe there's RGB lights at the top.
That'd be so
like a Corsair
that
trophy.
That would make it look even more like a graphics card. It just glows.
Amazing.
Rainbow
It'd be
colors.
HyperX, by the way. That's the official sponsor.
What if it was made out of
yes,
what if that
HyperX.
crystal was like diamond?
Oh,
Okay, not
that's
that.
what I'm talking about.
Not that. No, definitely not.
That's what I'm
Definitely not.
talking about.
This would be. Imagine if this was the actual trophy, but it was like a mouse instead of the Xbox controller.
All they've done there is glue an Xbox controller to the top of a normal trophy, right? That hasn't been custom designed.
Well, actually, you don't know that. They could have that could have been
nice.
rendered from solid gold.
I'm sure that's the most likely situation.
I think that's
you never know. GameStop. I mean, they've had a lot of money coming in recently from all the stock stuff, so they could be doing it. You don't know.
They're like, what is the major investment we can make to continue the growth of GameStop? Well, run an esports tournament and build a trophy out of solid gold
Make
and rubies.
$1 million esports trophy. That'll be good.
All right. Okay.
The other thing about Berlin, that it's like kind of speculation or whatever, but the dates align with the summer split, I guess, in League of Legends ending, which means that most likely we're gonna get the Masters 3 in the LEC studio, which is fucking sick. And we used it for First Strike EU.
Yes.
For it to be an international tournament now with players inside the studio would be absolutely amazing.
Does the LEC studio have live audience capacity as well, or are they not accounting for that?
Yeah, well, I think he said that like it's not planned right now, but they're trying to get it there when they can in terms of live audience. But there is live audience capacity at the LEC.
All right, cool. Yeah, I mean that all sounds awesome. I mean, this was supposed to be the first international event. We weren't even supposed to really have Reykjavik. It's just an added bonus. True. How nutty is that? I think that's so cool.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah. All right,
let's focus. Any Challenger Finals lands though, which would have been sick. I'm just waiting for the NA Challenger land.
Right. Are they intended to be LAN events eventually? The Challengers Finals, the regional events?
I would imagine, yeah.
I mean, I would think so, right? Because because like they're pretty big events, especially if they're the qualifying points and everything to get you to Masters and to Champions, etc.
Yeah.
So
and
they should be down the line, right?
Seems with the viewership as well that they would have. I mean, at least for NA, they could reasonably sell some tickets as well. For a live audience.
I mean, the viewership is pretty decent. Yeah. Okay.
I don't see a reason why they wouldn't even have the Challenger 1-2 not be a LAN as well.
What you mean, like like
LCS Studio, just like boop, come on, let's do it.
Yeah. Okay, let's focus on Reykjavik. We're gonna start with North America because we have our two teams who are representing NA, and it's not the two teams that we were expecting. I don't think. I mean, I think you may have said again jokingly, "Are we sleeping on version 1?" Because we didn't expect them to do.
No, they did because version 1, I believe, or someone that really liked version 1 clipped us and made another like trombone music background of like Wyatt saying, "Are we underestimating version 1?" And we're like, "Nah, no way," And then like, yeah.
I mean, the thing about with version 1 though is that I don't know how, unless you're on the inside, unless you're somehow spectating their games over the past few weeks, I don't see how you could have, predicted them to make it, because they made such tremendous changes to their approach to the game.
Yeah.
I don't see how you could have reasonably predicted that without insider info, genuinely. Because they were definitely a solid team before, and they had a lot of positive aspects that we had gone over when they initially qualified.
Yeah.
But they qualified, and I think the main reason they qualified is because they had the best read on the meta. They used a Viper really well. They used Astra really well, and that propelled them through. That, along with they have a solid roster. They have two really good duelists, and I think Penny is like a real star player in NA right now. Mm-hmm. But I don't see how you could have reasonably predicted them to go through, because they just changed so much in 2 weeks, which is they deserve a lot of credit for.
They do,
because
absolutely.
they took the team really far.
And the addition of Whippy made a huge difference too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, other teams didn't make the adjustments at all. Like from the teams that made it through Challengers 1, it was 100 Thieves, Xset, version 1, and Envy, right?
Yeah.
And literally all 3 of the rest of them did not make massive adjustments at all going into this event. So yeah, huge credits to them. I think like when we talk about version 1 previously, it's just that they didn't really show us the ability to step up and actually beat the big teams, but like they always had close games. Like in the stage 1, for example, they were always losing to FaZe out of all the teams. They were always having close games against them and then losing to them. Like when they were back as Never Done and then switched to version 1. So I don't know, when I actually watched those games back, or not back, I didn't watch them back. That'd be way too much effort. But like when I remember, they were doing like kind of off of the I don't know what the idiom is, but they weren't doing the normal thing in NA. They were playing off the beaten track. They were playing double dive comps with Breach, for example. They were, and a lot of other places also being really NA style, but like their approaches to each map were much different. So I always felt like there was, as soon as they showed something that they could actually beat these bigger teams, that they would be very good, but not this good.
Yeah,
honestly.
I wanna kind of work our way through the bracket, starting with the teams that got knocked out the earliest, because those we have the like theoretically the least to talk about those, and then we'll build up to the bigger and bigger teams until we eventually go on a bit of a deep dive about Sentinels and version 1 as they head into Iceland. But I want to start really with like the run of a couple of teams that kind of flopped. First of all, because they bombed out pretty early on, Xeppaa. I want to start there because that was a team that actually had quite a bit of hype coming into this tournament because their scrim partners were bigging them up. They'd been playing the Viper quite a lot. Xeppaa had always been making pretty consistent top 4 runs, and you felt like they were more likely to improve than regress. And yet that wasn't what we saw here. What the fuck's going on?
I mean, you could essentially put them as if version 1 is the 1, they are the 0. They were just binary opposites.
Wow.
There was genuinely, version 1, they both qualified for the first qualifier. Version 1 changed tremendously, made it all the way through the bracket. Xeppaa changed absolutely nothing and failed for the same reasons that, despite qualifying, their struggles in their qualifier came from their attack sides and how unbelievably readable they are. And they changed nothing in this tournament. Their attack halves were just abysmal. I mean, they found no success on attack. There was a point where they were like 2-23 on attack rounds.
That's brutal.
I mean,
that is actually brutal.
It was really rough. All their success came from defense, and it's just the same thing over and over again, which is they have...
What is that bind? I watched this game, and I gave up on this series. I was watching the VODs back, and I watched the bind, and I just realized that it was 2 teams that were just lost. And I think Envy got slightly better as the bracket progressed, but they also seemed lost. But Xeppaa were just... Yeah, they did not play at their peak when it mattered.
I don't even think it's that they didn't play at their peak. I just don't think they recognized what was... I wonder if to some extent they felt like what they did was working in the previous qualifier because they did have their best run yet, so they didn't necessarily feel that they needed to change much, or rather they just maybe didn't recognize what they needed to change from watching the games back. But it's the same story on their attack half as it was in the previous, which is they're incredibly readable. They don't work the map very well. They stand outside one bomb site. They typically will use some piece of utility that alerts the enemy team to their presence. They never rotate off. There's never pressure on another side of the map. They stand outside of a site, and you can see every time they hit a site, they're hitting into 3 or 4 players every single time. Yeah. It was the same story in both their games. Like NRG and Envy were just... Every single hit, there's 3 or 4 players already on the site. It was pretty disappointing, honestly, because I enjoy Xeppaa's approach to the game in regards to their defense and the time they put into perfecting their setups and the way they use utility, but they really need to fix their attack apps if they're ever going to make it deeper.
They were ahead of the meta, I felt still, like coming into this event with their usage of Astra and Viper, and then they just kind of flubbed super hard, and they had all the same problems that you talked about, Wyatt. And even on top of that, their split, which was their map that they looked amazing on before, they had a real, especially versus Envy, they had a rough split performance, and that would have changed the whole series if they had just performed on split. Like they had their pocket comp with BCJ on Breach, and they just could not find any value on their attack halves again. I mean, they even had a worse defense than they had in the past on Split. So it was just a big flub for Xset in general. I mean, somehow our 2-hour moments of silences for Xset on this show has not empowered them anymore.
Yeah, that's very sad that was the case, honestly.
I know.
Yeah. I honestly think that the way that they played in the seeding matches, and we were talking about that a lot after the seeding matches happened in Challengers 1, where we really didn't know what the hell they meant because Sentinels hadn't qualified and a bunch of other reasons as well. But they showed their hand against Envy. Like, they literally showed their hand in the game against Envy. Literally the same comps, literally the same ideas. Thlyfo and Sage on binds. And while it worked in the seeding matches, this time, especially now with the Viper buff, I feel like that sort of style that they always are doing gets hurt even harder. Like Wyatt's saying, they're having the attack problems where they're kind of just breedable. They're kind of grouping up on sites eventually and just smack dab going for it. The FNS playing Viper and pretty much every other team as well, adding some flavor of Viper in the mix, hurts that even harder. Even if they make slight adjustments to fix maybe a couple issues where they can end up taking a site or they block the ability to be red, everything, they just get stuck once they go for their attacks. So yeah. I think they played their hand.
The weird thing about that, though, as well, is when we were talking to BCJ, he said that they were just kind of improvising in those games. They just came up with it on the fly. They were just like, oh, yeah, fuck, well, I guess we'll just run the Viper and the Sage. We'll just figure it out on the fly. Maybe they got baited by the success that they had against the Victor Sky, and they just thought, oh, yeah, this is good. You know? I could see that being the case for sure. If you're trying to come up with a game plan for this tournament and you're like, well, why don't we just use the stuff that beat Envy? But you don't realize like what Envy was doing was essentially trolling in those games, and you just get sucked into a false sense of security.
But they kept playing Sky.
We say essentially trolling. Victor was on
played
Sky.
Sky again.
Yeah, and then for one game, and
then it gave up. So I mean, Envy are also a bit lost in the sauce.
Sky on Ascent like pretty consistently, but everywhere else he wasn't adding it on bind, for example, which they did in that troll match.
But he only played it once on Ascent, didn't he? And then when they went into the lower,
Phoenix.
he went back to Phoenix. I think he either played it once or twice, but he went back away from this comp.
They played
after
it once.
failed.
They played it once in the lower. Then when they played 100 Thieves, he went back to Phoenix.
Right,
He played the Sky versus Xset again in the lower on Ascent. So. Oh yeah.
Really?
And Cloud9.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he played it against Cloud9.
Yeah, in the opening matches they did. Yeah. So he did, but in the lower they didn't swap until the very end when they played 100 Thieves and eliminated them.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But this. I mean, let's take a little time to talk about Envy as well, and break poor little Avast's heart.
That's me.
Because I was a bit doubtful of the team, and in terms of like how they would make the Opping Astra work, how they would make their aggression work with the current meta.
That is such a tragedy that we just witnessed.
That is brutal. But when you actually look at how a lot of the other teams made it, there were a lot of teams that were doing very good defensive aggression, especially in Europe. Like Fnatic have been doing that extremely well. And it felt like Envy could have been able to put it together, but I'm concerned about Envy. I said this on my stream when I was watching them yesterday as well, is that they look so limited by what their players can play. They want an Oppa, but they also want an Astra, and they get tangled up there.
Yeah.
They want Victor to be in a position to frag, but they also want to play into the meta, so they're trying to put him on Sky, and then eventually they're just reverting back to Phoenix, but they don't actually have... this isn't a good meta for playing Phoenix, particularly, unless you're trying to...
Do the liquid comp? That's one thing I was thinking of. Maybe on some of the maps they could try the liquid comp if they wanted Mummy to play a Yampy style,
but they
Jett
don't
to some extent. And
they didn't have good ideas
Omen.
of how to set Victor up when he transitioned over to playing like the Phoenix. And I mean, they didn't have great ideas with the Sky either, but I can kind of put that to one side and be like, all right, that was something you were trying. But their whole style normally revolves around defensive aggression and setting up Victor to be in the position to succeed. And they didn't have good ideas of how to use the Viper utility and the rest of the comp that they're running to be able to to do that. It just felt very lackluster from them.
Yeah, I mean that was you're touching on something that we talked about when the signing happened. That I think was always I know I talked about it being a concern. I think we just did on the show generally. We did a couple times after that. Just the fact that there is the signing of Food has created role overlap with him and Caboose, and he has a rather limited agent pool. And we've seen when he's tried to play other agents, like when they've thrown him on Sage, etc., he just can't. He doesn't have the utility to enable his play style, which is that he just can't help himself, and he has to fight. And when he's playing agents like Sage, he's just dry peeking, and it just doesn't work.
Victor goes for the utility dump, where he tries to get rid of his utility as soon as possible so that he can run around with his rifle. It feels like that watching him when he plays some of these other agents. It just feels like he wants to get it down to the core of just him and a rifle.
But I think this is just going to be the problem. I think it's just always going to be a problem with this roster unless the players really put the time into developing some of their other agents. Because I think, it's still just a problem that Victor and Caboose just have the same agent pool to some extent, except Caboose can also... Well, actually, even Victor played Omen, and that was one of his other okay agents. But it's like they have two guys who can play Phoenix, Braze, and Omen. And then I feel like Mummy's on Astra because Mummy's just like a good teammate who's like, I'll just play whatever you guys need me to play. So he's kind of just been thrown onto the Astra. But yeah, I agree with your sentiment there. I think they need to switch some things around.
I think there's merit to this idea, but at least in NA, I feel like teams are really not able to make super massive like improvements just by having an expanded agent pool. But like to me, it's very obvious that the issue that you guys are talking about, like clearly bugs them on maps like Split, for example, where they just like kind of just revert to like some other real random thing, and that's like all they ever do. Like where Mame plays Jett, is that who plays Jett on Split?
Yes.
Like
Mame plays Jett.
It just, I think that does show on some of those things, but I don't know. I didn't feel like the agents were what were causing them problems in this. Maybe like some of the ideas that are the fact that they're not really be able to dump anything with when he switches to Phoenix and stuff like that. But to be honest, I saw a lot of cool ideas from the Ascent map specifically. Like obviously there was the Molly Bowl with the suck in
that's
main.
cool.
There was some of that also B main, and like the fact
that was when they reverted.
That
was their original plan for this tournament, was the sky, So it's like they had to go back to their comfort in order to look better.
Okay, I thought you were saying that when they went back to Phoenix, it felt like they just didn't have anything new, which I kind of disagreed with.
I think that, I mean, that Phoenix play was pretty good, and I think that in general was all right. But outside of Ascent, when I was watching Food play on the maps on Bind in particular is where I noticed this. Yeah. But and on Haven actually too. They weren't, he was just solo pushing areas, and there wasn't any information that was leading to it. There wasn't any setup or distraction that was empowering him. And against teams that didn't do anything about it, like Xeppaa, he was getting big value. Him and Caboose flanking out and being able to destroy them. But I
guess my point is that isn't an agent problem. That's an envy problem. That's a Food problem, right?
Well, I think it's a team problem to set him up, more so than anything. But I think my issue comes back to as well, can they even do anything else? Or are they just stuck running that kind of stuff over and over? And it really feels to me like Envy is just stuck doing that stuff over and over. This game was weird.
That speaks to Envy, or just NA style in general. Like I was saying on Backchat, it's like they just try to play optimally with whatever they can, and that means like no matter what strats you come up with, let's try to make it work against everything. And that has always been NA's, claim to fame, is that they can adjust on the fly in the moments with the same defaults and tactics that they've always used against any team, right? Yeah. And I don't think that works in Valorant that much right now, when there are teams who are taking massive advantage of like the strategic advantage,
Yeah. I mean, when you compare how Envy was playing off the Astra utility in particular too, it's like we talked about how Mummy's just sort of playing Astra. I think Mummy did some good things, but when you compare it to like how version 1 was setting up plays with their Astra, like very often they would just having a very aggressive peak off of Astra. They wouldn't just do the classic, okay, we're putting a star here on the choke for when the round starts, and then we're gonna suck, and then okay, now we're gonna go on site, right? There was never anything that was super innovative for them. On top of the fact that they were still just doing like, well, we hope we're gonna push an extremity and like try to take a flank, and then we're not gonna take any other map control. We're not gonna set up any other plays. We're just gonna like push, and then we're just gonna like do very basic stuff with Astra, like as just treating her like an omen. And I feel like Envy they didn't feel like they had like a great read on what they wanted to do. Like I do think they are stuck in a habit of this is how we always play, and we're gonna keep playing like this. And the agent pool for them is tricky, but it's much more they just don't seem like they're comfortable playing off of each other currently right now and how the game is being played.
That's kind of where I was trying to get to, and like specifically in the game against version 1, I just felt like they had really bad mid-game decisions and ideas, and that's surprising to me because FNS has historically been so freaking good at that. But I could see that, especially on that, I think it was last map against version 1, where they absolutely choked. Like they choked on this map. FNS was sometimes the guy who was in those positions where he was trying to work something first or trying to find a gap in something, and it would just all fall apart. And that's where I was like, all of a sudden, like something's not working, and something's not working in this case with FNS.
NSG.
It does seem in this tournament as well that I guess in regards to individual, there was a bit of struggle from the supports on Envy. I would be curious. I don't know if it's something they'll try, but I would be curious to see how they would operate with a Liquid-esque comp with like the Scream Phoenix Yampy Jett theory, but because I'm thinking about that in regards to on the second day specifically. I think Mummy had kind of a rough first day, but then I don't know how much of that is also he's playing Astra and he's in such a supportive position. But on the second day, his opping was just, I mean, it was nasty. It was, he is a sick opper. I would be interested to see what they could do with Mummy playing an aggressive Jett on attack and having him be an opper on defense and trying to find more value from him that way. And then instead try out Caboose back on the Omen/Astra instead.
God, I mean, this round that we're watching right here is just everything that I was disliking about Envy. So there's no setup for FNS peeking in mid. He's just trying to peek off the drone, I guess, but the drone doesn't even get a tag, and he just swings out, has no confidence in taking the duel, tries to run away, gets caught. Mame's holding an angle in B main, and then, is it Victor? No, it was it Caboose, I guess? Swings out wider than the angle, just dry peek in B main. It's not based on like their upper holding it at all. They're just pushing through. When Envy has been at their best previously, it's because they have great ideas of how to proactively take the map. That to me defines what made Envy great, is that they had really solid team ideas of we want to use our utility in this way to push out this area of the map, and we're going to use that information to give us an advantage. We're going to make sure that we repush areas, that we have extra information to be able to stack sites and beat teams when we're on defense. And then their attacking rounds are often like teams, players lurking around, or FNS being able to catch good timings on people. Both aspects of that non-existent in this tournament. And I don't know whether the nerves got to them, or they just didn't have good game plans, or they didn't understand the meta, or what. But the play was so disjointed from Envy, and it felt like an IGL or practice difference. When you look at V1 and they have a trap play set up in B main with the flash and the nade, and then their attacking rounds, they're so much better at being able to take mid control and deny Envy information. There was a big IGL diff when it came down to this series in particular, because Vanity had a good idea of what he wanted to do with his team, how to IGL them, and how the meta worked, and FNS just simply didn't at the time.
Yeah.
I do wonder as well. I mean, the sky indicates to me that they want to change something because they feel like what they've been doing at this point should be red, which I think is the truth. I mean, I think they've at some point, yeah, it's like they fall back to the comfort here with the Phoenix, but it does get red. Like Food and Caboose, the way they work the map together, the way that they play in tandem on defense, it's just you could see it. You've seen it a million times now in so many tournaments. So it's like they wanted to change something, but what they changed with the sky was fairly small in relation to the changes we saw from other teams. And it wasn't enough to make a difference, and then they kind of felt like they had to fall back on what was familiar, but what is familiar is also just tired at this point. Which is why I feel like they need more of a significant change, like kind of in partial to what you're saying about them controlling the map on defense. That's what I mean. Like, maybe start running the Jett instead now to hold some map control with Mummy AWPing. Just try something a bit different in terms of the aggression with on defense taking map control. I just think they need a switch. And honestly, I don't know. I don't know if FNS can really switch his role at this point or try something different, but it does feel like he needs something to refresh himself.
I mean, the Viper was different.
Yeah, maybe the Viper's the answer then. But because I don't know, because there was a run of time where FNS was looking like a legit individual player. I mean, he was really good, specifically when he was on Cypher. It was around like late last year, heading into 2021, where his individual form was excellent. But so far in 2021, he hasn't been that. He hasn't been at that level. No. So I feel like he kind of needs something to rejuvenate himself individually as well.
I think the Astra Viper has significantly changed also like the role of Sentinel a bit, because it's so much easier to split the site now and to just own areas of the map that your Sentinel was able to control a lot better before, or also just set up lurks. And FNS, I think when I watch him play, I feel like they've struggled a bit because they're relying on FNS to be their caller, but the whole concept of like how you're hitting sites now and how you're splitting sites with Astra and Viper has changed the tempo drastically, because you can set up a wall and like not play off that. You can hit stars very aggressively. You also have the Cosmic Divide to like split the entire site if you place it well. And it's really changed how Sentinels, I feel, hold map control now, because you're just able to split so much more area. And it's a lot harder for one person to hold down a site better, in my opinion. And I feel like running on FNS's IGLing has also affected how Emmy's going to look at the game, because you just don't take it's just not the same tempo of the games being played anymore. The tempo of the game is just a lot different.
It is. If you, I mean, that also applies to attacking rounds too. I was noticing so many teams in this tournament, and where their game plan has previously been to try and take map control, and then they're not going to try and force utility out of the defenders. They just hold it, cut noise, and then burst onto a site. And that's been the plan. Like, if you think about Split, they take mid, they take a bit of B main, they wait for a while, and then they go pop through B heaven. And that applies to a lot of different maps, like Ascent that we were just watching. They'll take Cat, they'll take A main, and they pop. And that doesn't... We're in a delay meta right now. So many teams running Astra or Viper or Sage, where you have the mollies, the slows, the sucks, and you can't run effective pops if you haven't forced out utility or dragged them away from that site. If you're just trying to pop into a default defensive setup, you are probably going to lose in this meta, whereas that hasn't been the case previously. We haven't been in really, like, since Brim was removed from the game, we haven't really had that many mollies to deal with.
You say that, except Liquid was playing a lot of Brim. You say
well,
that,
exactly. That's why I'm saying that this applies to North America, because the way that NA has played for so long has been without serious mollies other than a Killjoy to have to worry about. And so once you force out the Killjoy utility, or if you avoid them, you only really have to worry about, I mean, that's it. You just pop, and what? You get paranoid? That's about the only stalling utility that previously existed. Chalk darts, you're just going to run through them. You can't run through a Viper molly where you're getting vulnerable, or a wall where you're taking 50 damage, or the Astra suck where you're getting slowed and vulnerable, or the Sage slow. It requires much more thought on your attacking rounds to try and work the map and draw people away from their positions so that you can get in through choke points, or to just bleed them of utility, which is really difficult playing against a Viper and an Astra, because even if they have one suck up and a wall, it's still really fucking hard. So I think this challenge of dealing with the current meta ruined some teams where, like Xset, their attacking rounds were awful. Envy's attacking rounds were pretty poor as well. And a lot of the teams on Split just couldn't get shit together on their attack either. And it seemed to be a running trend throughout NA.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that assessment just in general. Maybe not entirely on when I watch Envy, but yeah, I think that is a significant hurdle that NA teams have to deal with. I would really like to go back and watch like the first strike for Envy and also the Masters Envy and see if these are the same types of things that are happening when I think about like the mid-ground calling and not being able to find like the actual ideas, because this seems to be a pattern where they get to the final tournament. They look so fantastic going into that final tournament, and then all of a sudden like everything falls apart. And
did they look great though going into this? Because I know I saw so many people
they look good. Not great.
My assessment was they would have won the first qualifier if they didn't do the Victor Sky thing. If they just played what they normally played, I think they would have just won if they were trying.
Right. Yeah. But that was before teams
that was
like
a different meta.
C9 and Sentinels looked. Well, I mean, even C9 we wouldn't have.
Yeah, it was also a different meta still. That was because it wasn't the exact meta that we're playing.
I mean, who did you guys predict came out to Iceland before the thing?
Right? I think I had Sentinels
and Envy.
I might have Envy, yeah.
I mean, Envy were the best. Envy were the best team in the first qualifier. They would have won if they didn't do the Victor Sky thing. Like they took a map off 100 Thieves who were giving it their all, and they were just getting team flashed the whole game. So it was. I felt that they were the best team in the first qualifier. I mean,
what a ridiculous round this was, by the way.
Oh yeah, this was very
insane.
Just silly.
I was gonna say as well. I mean, I don't know how much of a disservice have the Scrimbucks done to Envy? How would we view Envy if we didn't have this narrative that they were this god tier team? Like I think the Scrim. What I'm trying to figure out in my head is, do we have this narrative that Envy are this sick team who have failed to realize their potential of potentially being the best team because they've shown that in tournaments, or because we've heard about it in scrims?
The big narrative of Scrimbucks for them was going into first strike.
Yeah.
Right? They won close. They won the first qualifier for that one. Same thing in the other one. So they performed in tournaments. It's not like the Scrimbucks were completely unfounded for them back at first strike. Sure. I don't think we had any of that going into this though. But still, like, they looked freaking good. And this is the first time that they like stopped playing seriously in the quals for seeding and stuff like that, remember? So it was kind of different, but still, I think that the reputation was based off of matches itself more than anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, though, because I do think the Scrimbucks inflated Envy's stocks a lot around the end of last year.
I wonder if it honestly just hurt them. This whole narrative of that as well.
But they were still like
put too much pressure on
them. They were
them.
still, throughout 2021, they've still been, a top
They've been finishing top 4 in an A the entire time, right?
They have since
top 3 probably,
since Pop Flash in like September, whenever that was. They've been a top 4 team the entire time. They haven't slipped out of the top 4.
So is that
which is really good,
hurting them in any way? I mean, I don't know how Scrimbucks would hurt. Scrimbucks would be like hurting them would be like this team is a top 3 team, and then Envy like never gets close to top 3 ever. But they've always been there, you know.
I know, but it's still I feel like the narrative around them is that they just have never realized their potential. I guess I bring that up. I bring that up just I mean, I guess based on that narrative, but
I understand where you're coming from, though. I don't think necessarily that Envy are choking, though. If I watch them, like that's always going to be another big narrative for teams who are expected to do well and don't. I think there was some moments where they flopped. But I think there was a lot of moments for a lot of teams where there were individual rounds where they flopped. I just think it comes down to the game plan, personally. I don't think they had a great game plan coming into this tournament.
All right, let's go on to another team. We've been talking about Envy for are we 2 hours in?
Yeah, let's
move.
Let's go on to 100 Thieves, because they actually ended up getting eliminated in the lower bracket much earlier than people were expecting. They lost the game to Sentinels. There's a lot of sad boy clips on Twitch from Hiko and Steel talking on their streams as well, for obvious reasons too. They beat Unbox pretty convincingly. They lose close games to Sentinels and then Envy in the lower bracket, right?
And they absolutely dominated Sentinels on Icebox too. They absolutely dominated them. That was one of the worst Iceboxes I've seen since Immortals in a long time. Since like
let's start with the
Immortals.
Sentinels game though, because they begin on like the map pool goes down to Haven, Icebox, and Bind, which is different to how it would normally go because Sentinels are letting through Bind recently and removing Ascent. So slight tweaks. This what did you guys think about this Haven game? Because a lot of the narrative of the 100 Thieves guys talking on stream recently has been about how they lost 13-11 so often. They lost here 13-11. They lost, it was Bind. No, Bind was a stomping. I forgot about that. But they lost to Envy 13-11, I think twice as well. So a lot of, there we go. It was there and presumably Haven as well. Yeah. So a lot of their talk has been about how winnable it was for them. But when I think back to that Sentinels game, I don't think that this was a particularly winnable series for 100 Thieves. They went down 9-3 at the very beginning, and it almost feels like they were lucky to get back for it even being close. When I think back to that, they got shit stomped on the final map. They did fantastically well on Icebox, but their Haven performance was so lackluster in the first half that it almost feels wrong to call it a close map.
Yeah.
Is that the impression that other people got as well?
I would tend to agree, yeah.
Maybe if the sides were flipped, I'd have a different perspective, but
perhaps.
Sentinels were so heavily in control of the first half, and then they lost some close rounds in the next. But 100 Thieves were not even, they weren't even in the first half particularly.
I was not, I appreciate 100 Thieves wanting to switch Ethan onto the Sky on this map to the extent that they did reveal a lot in regards to his Sage play previously. But I was not satisfied with what I saw from the Sky, particularly on this map. I felt a bit happier with it on the following Haven match against Envy. But in this map in particular, they just were not particularly proactive with it. Ethan was always playing towards Garage, or he was playing towards C. They'd maybe flash out Garage a couple rounds. They never really switched it up, and there wasn't like a take of A long with it. They weren't trying to control lobby. It was just a relatively passive Sky that would, on the odd round, sort of enable Asuna to try something towards mid, but it really was not bringing much value to them. So I get why they wanted to change it, and that all makes sense. It just didn't seem particularly fleshed out. It seemed like he was sort of just playing as he would have perhaps if he was on Sage, but he just had Sky utility this time.
To comment on the agents for a second, like to go off of what Wyatt's saying, it feels like twice now on Haven they've gone for this double initiator idea, and it just does nothing. Like sometimes it enables Asuna to go crazy, but it enables nobody else. And like, because I think naturally, like we've talked about previously on different episodes, Hiko wants to stay in the back, and so does Steel, right? Steel maybe is trying to get lurks off by himself, but that's the idea. Hiko is consistently all the way in the back of the pack, not really being able to use or do anything with the utility that the Initiator, Breach, or Sky on this map has given. That's why I think that, I don't think that this worked at all, at least against this team specifically, because Sentinels is a team that is very good at map control. If you do go against them trying to do one-off pushes, they're going to shut it down easily. And that was the story of this first half.
I felt completely. They are playing with a Sky and a Sova, and yet they didn't really gather information accurately to be able to inform their defense at all, and they got rolled over by Sentinels. They're absolutely rolled.
They're getting passive info. Ethan's like playing in C and re-clearing Garage. Mid-round.
But Haven is really like, you have to put a lot of work into Haven with the double initiator to get big value out of it. Like when you see the teams that play either double initiator or even just the Sky itself, they have a lot of really coordinated stuff to take advantage. Like they're very proactive on the defense with it. You can't just be flashing for info and not do anything off it. You have to flash and push different areas and be actively moving and you know, have some rounds where you're pushing down C, have some rounds where you're taking A lobby, some rounds where you're trying to.
I mean, compare their Haven to
garage.
FPX's Haven. Even though FPX lost, like compare 100 Thieves Haven with the Sky to FPX's Haven with Sky. It's like it's a night and day difference with just how coordinated you are with the Sky, just to get early information and then inform yourself mid round too. Like a lot of times they've used a lot of utility before even before the retake is going to happen for a site, because they want to inform their defense so early and like set up the rotation so early.
I think that it is kind of like an attack sided comp. The way that they play double drone essentially, and that kind of showed. I think that it has serious deficiencies on defense, and obviously that showed as well. But I think it would work against a team like Xset. Like I don't think it's a disaster. I think that Sentinels on defense versus attack against them is just a terrible matchup with this comp, because of the benefits that it gives are really difficult to, like, what information are you getting from against Sentinels? Like they're defaulting every round, and they're perfectly in the spots where you're going to grab info, and then it's useless info because they're just going to change it up afterwards, you know?
Yeah. I mean, Sentinels also did play very well here. Like this first half was a really good.
One thing as well on this first half, the adjustments never came to fruition. So many times they just walked up B, Sentinels. And by the time that 100 Thieves actually fixed something by putting Nitro actually playing into B, they stopped going there. They started going somewhere else, you know?
Yeah.
So it was very few rounds where the actual adjustments made any sense or made any impact when they were playing defense, which I think is a symptom of Haven in general because of the 3 sites.
Yeah, and at times just, I don't know. Well, frustratingly passive as well. Like,
very passive. I've just been reminded by that round. But the Sentinels planted and played off the site in 3 or 4 rounds.
They were doing it a lot this tournament overall.
And when you see version 1 and C9, they like to push the guys that are off site and make it really difficult.
The Brazilian stick.
You literally have to
do it. Yeah.
And watching 100 Thieves just all try and like bodyguard the guy defusing. They're like the Secret Service members just holding on site, trying to hold the angles for the guys peeking. You're never going to be able to do that.
I mean, we even on the previous round, like they're not as a. There are rare moments where as a team they seem to all kick it into gear and be aggressive at the same time. Like Kurt showed a previous round where Hiko was using the Hunter's Fury into the A site. As Sentinels were while Sentinels were trying to plant, he Hunter's Fury to stop the plant, and Ethan used Seekers, and no one's going in. They're all just standing outside of the site. Austin is the only one peeking from heaven. They're not trying to push in off a Seeker Hunter Fury. I mean, what value are we trying to get off this then? Just kill everyone with a Hunter's Fury? It's just. I don't know, man. It's just so passive, and then you just have Asuna running in trying to save the day every round, just trying to get 3 kills on. I mean, he's ridiculous. He top-fragged a ton of the games. He's playing well.
The Haven game where they played against, was it 8 against Envy, where he was just running down mid on defense?
Yeah,
and
that was the Haven adjustment.
4 of them.
Yeah, the Haven adjustment was Ethan is just going to put the shortest bird flash out of garage every round. Yeah, just pops as it leaves the door, and Austin is just sprinting down mid into window.
That is also not a setup. That's just relying on Asuna to carry your round. That's just like
that was the adjustment they made.
Yeah,
carry us harder. It was. I
wanted to bring up while we talk about 100 Thieves here, the Steel clip. I don't know whether you guys have watched it. I watched it on my stream last night. It was heart-wrenching, and he wasn't even talking about anything emotional. He was just talking about their struggles to adapt coming into this tournament, but the passion in his voice and the way that he conveyed himself, it was so clear that the guy wants to win. He wasn't angry. He was upset at his chat for not realizing how difficult it is to adapt before tournaments, because a bunch of people in his chat were just like, why didn't you guys play Astra? Just play Astra. Just do it. Just adapt. Yeah. And so he was getting upset at his chat, not realizing it, how difficult it is to be a pro player and a pro team coming into a tournament like this. And then he was also frustrated at their own inability to do it, I think, compared to their peers, because it is a ridiculous scenario that, I mean, the Valorant is always going to be like this. There's going to be a patch change. You're going to have to adapt shit. And the teams that are able to adapt effectively, I'm not going to say the fastest, because that isn't always what makes the difference, but adapt the best are going to end up having a large advantage. Teams like Version1, teams like Liquid and Fnatic over in Europe. That was what they did the best. And for 100 Thieves, part of what he was saying, to paraphrase him, was just like, we tried for, he said, we tried for 3 days to figure out a new Icebox comp. And we tried with, what did he say? He said they moved Hiko to Sky and Ethan to Nitro to Sage and Ethan to Astra or something like that. I can't exactly remember, but they made some drastic shifts to their Icebox comp. They tried it out for 3 days. They were theory crafting, going through stuff. And then at the end of it, they just realized it was a failed experiment. They had to pull the plug. They went back to make some shifts back to something similar to what they were running. And it ended up being their best map when they thought it was going to be their third best or something like that. And they just said that it just made so little sense, and they had so little time, it felt, to actually adapt. They didn't have the like weeks to be able to fine tune everything that they wanted to do. And so they just felt it. I'm reading between the lines here. He was saying it almost as if it felt hopeless. Like it was just like, well, fuck it. If we put all of that effort into Icebox and then it failed and then it ends up being our best map anyway, how the fuck do you even succeed? That was the impression I got from listening to it. It was very heart-wrenching.
Yeah. I mean, that's yeah. Well, that's what Steel is just, he's like the competitor's competitor.
Yeah.
He just truly wants to win, which is what makes him, which is what has made him a top player in both games for like 10 plus years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there is something to it. Yeah, it is definitely, it's a frustrating place to have to operate within, where you have 2 weeks to adjust, trying to get used to the meta. There are other teams. I mean, listen, Version1 were able to do it, which
a lot of other teams weren't.
And a lot of the teams weren't.
Yeah.
And that's why, and that's why they made it through. But that doesn't mean there still isn't something to be said about it, where when you're looking at the state of the meta and the teams succeeding, that they feel a bit behind.
They do. I mean, they were running the Omen in all of their maps other than Split, right?
Did we even see, I mean,
no, we didn't see it.
We don't even see their Split.
Yeah, they played Split only in the BO5 at the very end against what are they called? Envy. Yeah, in the finals. The integration of the Viper. Did they play
they did it on
Viper?
Icebox. They had Nitro and Viper on Icebox, and that was like their best map, like we talked about. So I mean, it's just the nature of the beast here, right? It's like you're gonna have to hopefully have a deep enough understanding to make the swaps fast. And it's not, I really don't. I feel like we're disappointed with 100 Thieves' performance, but it wasn't like they played poorly, right? Like they didn't look tragic. It's just it's clear they've lagged behind all the other teams compared to where they were.
This was the tournament that I had the least hope going forward in the future for 100 Thieves. I know that sounds dire and depressing or whatever, but like every other tournament before this, there was some spark of glimmer of life, like it was Ethan on Sage, it was Ethan in general. It was like they had really, really good ideas on some of the ways they were approaching it. They were the first team to pioneer single duelist really inside of NA. Like there was always, every time they had a disappointing finish, there was always something to look forward to and be like, wow, it was good. This time I you're talking about this clip. I haven't seen it, but to me, I can't help but wonder how the hell was there not enough time? Because they had 2 weeks, and was it 3 weeks actually? Open quals, challengers 2, and then it comes to finals, and the entire time after Masters to work about Astra and a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
Like there was a shit ton of time.
And that was my take when I watched this on stream as well, which was, yes, it's incredibly difficult to be a pro and to adapt and to have that system where you always have to be moving and changing stuff. But you're being compared to your peers. It is competition. And so it's not necessarily that you have to do it perfectly. You just have to do it better than the other people that you're competing against. And they're in the exact same situation as you, and some of them in a worse situation than you because they didn't qualify as early or something like that.
Look, I mean, we can play the comparison game all day. V1 is an easy one. Cloud9, they just got a new player who was playing their Astra, and they were probably I think they were the other excellent team in regards to using the good meta agents.
But what what my point is as well is that if other teams are capable of doing it, it's clearly possible, and there's something wrong with 100 Thieves' process. You can't really know what that thing is that's wrong when you're on the outside. It could be that their coach doesn't understand the game properly, so they're not able to feed them really useful ideas, so they might be starting from the wrong place, right? And then it takes them days to work towards the right place. It might be that their players don't have deep enough agent pools. So, for example, when his example of like they wanted to transition Hiko over to Sky on Icebox, he said on the clip, Hiko doesn't play aggressively enough to get value out of the Sky, all right? So maybe it's a player issue where your players don't play the agents for long enough. Maybe Nitro wasn't playing Astra for the last month like a lot of the other pros were to try and get it up to speed and bring creative ideas to the table. Maybe the IGLing just isn't good enough to be able to figure out what's going on. Or maybe the practice and like what you're actually focusing on in the server isn't the right stuff. It could be fucking a ton of different things. But I think it's, rather than focusing on we lost 13-11, it was close, we nearly made it.
Yeah.
I think focus on the fact that you guys were actually really far away from being the best team in North America, and something fundamental and core to your process is not working. Identifying that problem of why it felt like you didn't have enough time is what's going to get you to being the best team. I think that's the core issue that they need to work on. I don't know what it is, but they need to identify that problem.
I honestly think the aggression is like the big thing for this team right now, because of the fact that this meta to me feels, we talked about earlier how NA hasn't had to deal with like true molly slow stuff and like removing utility before. I feel like that's really hurting them here, because they just don't, when I watch 100 Thieves play, a lot of the times is like on top of the usual problems of like we have Asuna trying to do everything for us with like minimal setup, they're not being nearly aggressive enough to remove utility, in my opinion, very often. And I think that's like the key thing for a lot of these teams when you compare Europe play, when you compare how Sentinels played, like they were taking these aggressive, and even Version1 and C9 too, the teams that kind of exploded out here. There's a lot of plays where they're removing the utility early and trying to get the good setups. And 100 Thieves still feels like, I mean, you even hear from that Steel clip, it's like, well, Hiko can't play aggressive enough to get value out of the Sky. Well, it's like, okay, that's an issue, because also he's not playing aggressive enough to get value out of the Sova. You know, like we're not like we're sitting there, we're playing, and it's especially bad in this meta because of the fact that you need to be removing like snake bites, you need to be coming out early. You need to be having like the stars pop because they think you're going to be pressuring this angle, like, and having to be moved. Like, but they can't do that because there's only one person ever in front of the whole team, you know? So like, how are they ever going to remove this utility early from these other squads right now in this meta?
Sure. The positive side for them was that their Icebox looked really good. They demolished Sentinels on Icebox. They had some great ideas of what they wanted to do. The Viper integration was good. So maybe it is just a factor of time. Maybe this team is just slow to adapt, but if you give them long enough, they will eventually create something good. The question is whether that's ever going to work in Valorant to be able to give them a title.
Yeah. I mean, it would. Yeah.
You know, like maybe if you gave them months, would they be fine?
How are they doing in regards to points right now?
I've no idea. Do they have?
Did they get? I can't even remember what happened in the first.
They got points. It was probably like average, like 30 probably. So probably like 60 points.
They would need to do extremely well in Masters 3.
I mean, they need to do really well, or
they need to qualify probably in order to get there. Because even if they bomb out in Masters 3, you're probably getting like 200 points or something.
But in Masters 3, I mean, they have to deal with the new meta and Breeze being integrated, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And here we go. I mean, and that's not to mention that, I don't know.
100 Thieves have 50 points overall.
I mean, now that you mention,
and now that you look at
their map pool has always been odd too. I don't know. They need to do a lot in this,
especially compared to like C9 though, who's on the come up. Like, I honestly have way more confidence in C9 looking forward.
Yeah, I have more confidence in Cloud9 version 1. Absolutely. It feels like these teams are just hungry, and they have players at the helm that have a good understanding of the game. Like, I think I mean, if we want to talk about Cloud9 for a sec, I think putting Mitch at the helm in terms of his IGLing is pretty damn good. Like, they've got some good ideas. Their attacking rounds look all right. It's working well for them, and they have some cracked aimers. There must be an infinite amount of Leaf clips that we can pull up for this, right? He had a fucking monster of a tournament.
Leaf is insane individually. And aside from that, the way that they're able to set him up is just so nice. All of his utility as well always seems to have a purpose, whether it's Like whether it's Zeta on the breach setting him up on
Zeta
Split.
was so good.
I mean,
as well,
Zeta is so good.
He's
an incredible support player. I was saying this weekend, but he is the perfect example of how crucial it is for a player to be on the right role.
Yeah,
I mean, he is an amazing support player. But whether it's him setting up Leaf on the breach or whether it's Floppy, who just joined the team,
and is still really good.
And his utility was integrated very well. He was playing well on the Astra, always gravity wells to set up Leaf. I mean, they just put him in position to succeed. It's just excellent teamwork, and he does, and he takes full advantage of it. He doesn't. He really is just very consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Cloud9 were excellent to watch. I think they were another team that just had an excellent read on the meta. I think their Astra gameplay was excellent. Which is amazing
considering
duelists.
It's Floppy.
Yeah.
Who I think Astra's got to be one of the hardest agents to just come in straight into a fresh new game and play. It's probably the most different agent from CS, isn't it? I don't know, maybe not. But
probably. I mean, I think if you have a really good understanding of like timings and also like how you want to take map control, Astra is like a really good fit for you. And I think Floppy's a great fit because Floppy obviously has a really good understanding from his time in CS. And he just understands timings and he understands map control. And that's when Astra is really going to give you the most value.
This might be one of the best aces I've seen as well. This was so clean and crispy. The dodge on the flash, the punish of the dash is just phenomenal.
Leaf was out of control in this tournament. And I don't know what they'll do with the roster in the future, but I think it's he is just such a versatile player as well. Like he already proved himself on smokes that he can even be the star player on the team on that role. But as Leaf aside, I think Mitch was really fighting for his spot in this tournament.
Yeah, he was.
And he really earned it.
He did.
He was playing really well.
Yeah.
His lurks were excellent. He was playing very well on the Sentinel. And you got to see on Split, he got to go back to Killjoy as well. He was playing some of the vintage Mitch Killjoy, reminiscent of the First Strike era when his Killjoy was just shutting teams down. And he was playing really well on that. Listen, I think Mitch was doing a great job. It's going to be tough if they do want to change things because, I mean, they look damn good. They look like they could have absolutely qualified.
Yeah, I mean, they really were close. To being able to win over version 1.
Yeah, they were really close. I think my most impressive was the fact that they shut down Sentinels 13-1 on that split, which always has been like a strong. I think definitely going into this stage, it has been weaker. Sentinels is split, but holy moly, did they just absolutely shut it down.
Yeah.
Like there was no chance. I think this is the biggest loss that Sentinels had ever had on any map, at least in 2021 from what I could look at. This was ridiculous. And the reasons for it, in my mind, are Leaf's Raze. The fact that he's playing Raze and is having this impact, like fragging wise, is really, really, really nice because he actually adds a lot with combination with Zeta, with combination with Floppy and his stuff. A lot of people right now are kind of shying away from Raze and in favor of Phoenix, you know? And I feel like it actually, not necessarily on Split, but I feel like the fact that he's so good with Raze adds a lot to this team.
Yeah. On the other hand, you've got Pens playing Reyna on this map, where the Jett Reyna on Split.
I'm sure we'll get into that, but
it's just not the not the wave. It's not the vibe. Yeah. Further thoughts on Cloud9? I feel like they have a lot of potential moving forwards for the future. I'm feeling good about them. I said last week, big credit to Robin, the GM, for making the right changes for this team as well, because there was a long period of time where Cloud9 looked completely lost in the sauce, and they've just slowly Theseus'd their way to a really good roster.
I mean, this team looks amazing right now. Honestly, like I think this team is like, when you see how fast they adapted, it seems like the sky is kind of going to be potentially the limit for them. No joke. I feel really confident in how adaptable they were. If they had more time, I think they had more time together playing Valorant, they would be going to Iceland. Honestly,
sure, maybe.
I really do feel that.
They more than any other team, I think, in this tournament were just so active. It seems that they never waste a second of a round. Someone is always doing something proactive, but not alone. There was always some sort of mini setup with some piece of utility to face an area of the map. Someone is going to take a fight, but there's always someone to trade. The teamwork was so decisive. It was so
really good.
active. They really were good. I really thought that they were going to qualify. I feel like they just had it all. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do in the future. I mean, I'm going to be disappointed that they have to remove anyone if they do choose to bring in Xeppaa. I mean, listen, he might just be another god tier player. Like if they get a second Leaf on the team or even... But poiz was so consistent. He had like one bad map, which unfortunately was the last map. But I don't want that to overshadow how consistent he was throughout, aside from that map.
Yeah.
Because he really is a talent, and it's a shame if rumors end up being true that... I mean, listen, if they're going to bring in Xeppaa, I think there's probably only two people that they would replace at this point, right? It would either be Mitch or it would be poiz. And I don't think you can get rid of Mitch now. He looks like a gigabrain genius. So I don't think you can get rid of Mitch. And he was playing really well as a lurker, which isn't really anyone else's role on that team. No one else is really a Sentinel lurker or IGL. So... it would just... I think poiz has a really promising future, and it would suck to see him have to step down.
I think that's key, though, the fact that it's future, because in this iteration, he still looked like the most disjointed player on the team, like compared to everybody else. Like, oftentimes, like, not necessarily every time. I'm not making this an indictment of him at all. I'm just saying that, like, there were solo plays that cost him a round or two, in pretty much every single map. There was always a time where I'm like, really? Is this what the idea was for the entire team here? But then there's also the flashes of brilliance. I think with more time, poiz will become a superstar in this game. I don't disagree with that at all.
Yeah, it seems like a factor of time more so than anything else. All right, I think that brings us on to talking about Sentinels and version 1, does it not?
Sure. I mean, what other...
the other teams are like...
We're going to skip over Andbox
and NRG, but...
Andbox, NRG... Do you guys want to say your piece on those teams?
I really don't have much to say about either.
I don't have anything to say about either of them particularly.
Yeah,
I am disappointed compared to where Andbox, they're like they popped off randomly and then they returned. It's like a quick volcanic eruption and then they settled down. They're like, okay, back to losing.
I mean, it wasn't. It wasn't. I feel like you're being a little too hard on them there.
I'm being a little harsh, but compared to what I was expecting
from
like what we've seen from them, it was. I don't think it was like a necessarily like amazing performance from this squad compared to like that pop off they had.
Yeah,
I don't have much to say about energy, but I actually do legitimately think that when we had that moment, are we sleeping on Andbox? I think we were like they looked much better. They had I don't get how they lost to 100 Thieves this hard in the 2-0 fashion, but against version 1 they took them all the way. Like they went all they had, what was it, overtime last game, or it was 13-11 last game. Ascent they won, they just crushed it. Well, not crushed, but the first half was very solid for them. Haven, they got completely bopped by the Whippy Viper on Haven, which nobody's ever seen ever. But like every map, I feel like they actually did bring something new, something that actually was working, depending on what team you were playing. You're playing. I thought that they looked a little bit like how Cloud9's Rise has gone. Slightly different, obviously, because they're playing different agents. But even without, going meta comp completely, they still had new stuff. And Vice, or not Vice, who is it? Yay looks like a monster. Mata looks like a monster. Like, these guys are really, really talented, and it looks like they're actually forming into something super nice in my mind.
Yeah, I agree.
We'll see whether the roster shuffle that is inevitable murders them.
I don't think
that he really likes them. I just have that feeling for a ton of teams right now. I feel like it's like almost pointless to be talking about the future of teams when you don't know what the shuffle is going to look like in NA or EU.
A lot of teams could use a Mata or a Yay. I'll tell you that. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to shuffle, but who knows if that ESIC report will ever come out.
Lose a star talent like Android.
Yeah. Okay. Version 1 and Sentinels. Those are the teams that actually qualify for Reykjavik. Yeah. I wanna begin with version 1. We already talked quite a bit about them, but I want to specifically talk about them instead of the context of their peers in North America. I want to start framing it in terms of their competition that they're actually going to be facing in Iceland. How good do version 1 look? What are their strengths? How are you guys feeling about them when they're going to Reykjavik?
I feel that they're a pretty tactically sound team. And one of the things that I appreciated and pointed out when we had talked about them previously was that I really like their defensive sides. I like their defensive setups. And specifically, I like that at the beginning of pretty much every single round, they will take a different approach to their early round defense, whether it be Penny opting from a different position or some player pushing up in a different way with team support. They do something different at the opening of pretty much every defensive round to catch teams off. And I feel like that got even... that was pushed even further by the comps they were running, being able to use Astra and Viper within that. I like the team tactically. In regards to their comparisons worldwide, though, I am a bit concerned about the firepower overall, actually. I do think that Penny and Zellsis are, and specifically Penny, I think they're very solid. And they're top players within the NA scene. But overall in the world, I'm not convinced that the team has the firepower it takes when you're comparing them to, we don't know who's in from Brazil yet, but top Brazilian teams, or, you know, if you look at Liquid or Fnatic for that matter. I mean, if you're talking about Scream or Durka, I mean, it's just a different tier. But even actually past those guys, it doesn't even matter about the star players. I mean the depth overall.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I mean, that's it. I agree with that. That's it.
I like version 1. I think they're doing really well. What I'm slightly concerned about is whether or not this could be a bit of a honeymoon period for them as well, because I think that they made such a meteoric rise in terms of their progress with Whippy on the roster and changing up their comps. And a lot of what they did, I think, was revolved around that. And I don't think we've really seen yet whether they can... Okay, they're not going to need to reinvent themselves for Iceland. That's going too far. But they're going to need to keep adding new stuff. They're going to need to keep developing over the next few weeks. And they're going to need to broaden what they're adding to each and every map. I don't think we've seen that demonstrated yet from version 1 just because they haven't been around for long enough. They're a team that's only been around for 4 months, and this iteration of the team that actually looks the best has only been around for 1 tournament. So... Yeah. I don't think it's anything like FaZe, where they played such an unorthodox, aggressive style that it was obviously a honeymoon period, because it's like, those guys have got to fucking bang their shots out. Otherwise, that style doesn't really work. Version 1 play pretty smartly. They've got good team play. They use their utility really well. They've got a good understanding of the Viper and the Astra. And they also have... Vanity's got some really good attacking ideas when it comes to Ascent, particularly. His understanding of that map, I think, is really good. But I feel cautious about their performance in the next 3 weeks. I think it's possible that they could flop on the world stage.
Yeah, especially since they're not veterans, really. This is like the biggest event ever that a lot of these players have ever participated in.
Yeah.
And like, you're coming up against some veterans. And then also, I mean, this team just reminds me of essentially like way better Xset. Where like they have a very good grasp of the meta, like back when Xset was performing really well, and they have like a very strong fragger with Penny, much like Pure is for Xset. And I don't know, I'm just not feeling confident about the rest of the team, and like where they're going to stack up against like very strong performing fraggers all around, like those in Europe.
I think they're a pretty well-rounded team, though. I mean, Effie's is probably the weakest fragger on the team, and he's still got decent like utility usage, and he's playing supportively, and he's setting up his team fairly well.
Better than decent, honestly.
Yeah,
I mean, that's underselling him.
And Vanity's their IGL, and he's actually one of the best fragging IGLs that we have at the moment in North America. It's that they do still... There's not a clear weakness on the team. It's not like they have pop-off players and then really weak players as well.
No.
They're all carrying their weight when it comes to this team, which I think is what you really need. And a lot of their players are... They're intelligent enough to take advantage of opportunities when they're presented themselves. I think this is a good team. I'm just... it's... At the moment, they look like they're on a bit of a run, and they got severely outclassed by Sentinels in the finals. There's still a tier gap between Sentinels and the other teams in NA when everyone's playing their best. And I just worry whether that's going to happen when it gets to the Iceland as well. I want to see more from them.
Yeah.
I think they have depth, like in terms of all their players you guys have already mentioned. I think they really do. In comparison to like FaZe, in terms of their honeymoon period, especially when we talk to Vanity on Backchat, it just feels like it's different. It feels like Vanity actually knows why they are winning.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah,
whereas
yeah.
when you guys talked to Baby Bay, it felt like they didn't know what the fuck was happening. You know, they were just like, yeah, we're just smeeking. Like, what the fuck does that even mean? You know, and Vanity like legitimately knows why Sentinels is better than them, what they did that actually caught teams off guard. There's actual like real thought going into that, and you know, I'm still cautious about them, but I think that this is a legitimate NA hope. Because of their confidence, because of how Vanity talks, how the rest of his team talks, like Effie's and like these guys have experience. They're not vets. Like Effie's has been playing LANs for forever.
I mean, hey, we talk about people being inexperienced. That applies to a lot of the guys who are coming from Europe as well.
Yeah,
a lot of the people
I was going to bring that up when we
Everyone on
talk about
Liquid,
them, like
aside
Liquid
from
and
Screaming
Fnatic are
Yampy.
Exactly. Apart from
vets.
Screaming Yampy, those guys have actually underperformed. in
Yeah,
big
those guys
games
have had
before.
confidence issues before.
Exactly. So I don't think that they're going in with a disadvantage when it comes to that. I mean, it is very much up in the air, and you never know who's going to perform well and who's going to fail their first time around. But
Honestly,
I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue for them. What I'm interested in is Vanity's point about his IGLing being very good against Brazilian teams in the past in CS, because I think there could be a scenario where if that's true, if Version1 do end up being very good against aggressive play styles, then I think Sentinels are also really good against aggressive playstyles like that. They've demonstrated that time and again.
Yes.
I think that both of those teams might be able to have very good reads on what to do against the Brazilian teams that might end up creating perhaps even like a rock, paper, scissors between NA, EU, and Brazil, where Brazil's aggression maybe catches EU a bit off guard, and EU's overall kind of structure and team play is enough to outplay the North American teams, but the NA teams can really catch the Brazilian aggression. I've got this theory in my head that we could see something like that occur, because it's not just about how good you are, it's how well you match up against your opponents. And
Honestly,
I think that is one of
point.
the strongest hopes for Version1, honestly, is that Vanity's IGLing continues to develop and they add more and more stuff, because the stuff that they added in the short term is fucking good.
like, what the hell? Their split is their split defense is unbeatable. I literally can't think of a way that a team can actually, like, maybe a player like Yampy playing a Jett that can like get up and get out and break the utility and stuff like that, but like Sage, Raze, Astra, like it's insane. It's
There's
absolutely
a lot to deal
insane,
with, yeah.
and nobody was able to get through it. Like, their attack, maybe not so much, but yeah, they brought a lot of new stuff. Let's talk about Haven for a second too. Like, Viper on Haven, the only team that's did that was Liquid, like literally the morning before, and they come out and it looks fantastic. It's slightly different too. I think, what are they playing with another controller? Yeah, they are. They're playing with Astra instead of Liquid playing with Brimstone, and
Brim, yeah.
it enables them. Like, it enables Vanity to lurk a little bit.
It does.
Play aggressive when he does, because they have Whippy as a backup smoker. It enables Whippy to play how he wants to play as well, because he doesn't have to worry about everything too. Like, I
this
think
is a silly moment.
Yeah.
I will
That's
say though,
so
you could
funny.
feel the nerves in this match. Like, you could feel the tension and the nerves, and things got sloppy in this game towards the end. Cloud9 threw away many opportunities to potentially go to Iceland here, but Version1,
This is what
I
think
think
is going to be like.
Yeah, but I feel pretty good about Version1 from this game, because I felt like they improved the higher the stakes were in the match. Okay, maybe not for the final, but at the end of the day, the final was a seeding game anyway, so that really wasn't the highest stake. It was this one. Whereas Cloud9 crumbled a bit. Cloud9 had players that crumbled under the pressure a little. Version1 had players that really stepped up. And Version1 in this split on attack, I was doing a VOD review last night, and Version1's attack on split, I was like, okay, they're all right, but I don't think it's going to be good enough when they get to Iceland. They played this game. They started running some really nice fakes. They were taking mid control, and then they were actually using it to confuse Cloud9 as to where they were going on the map. And they got two maybe even 3 rounds just off the back of that, where when they had been playing against other teams, like when they played against, I guess it was Envy and Sentinels that they played against, it just felt like they were taking mid and then they just kind of got lost. But it's like constant improvement from version 1 that if they keep working on it, it's decent times.
My fear is that their improvement comes from officials. You know, it comes from playing tournaments.
Right.
It comes from being experienced in that fact, and there's not going to be much of that. And there's a break. You know, if Iceland was tomorrow, I'd be so hype. I'd be like version 1 to the moon. You know, that type of thing. But I just don't know what
the future holds.
What version?
What version?
What version?
I don't know which one is going to show up at Iceland.
They're going to be able to scrim against the other EU teams, right?
Yeah.
Like if they're flying to Iceland, they're going to be able to do essentially like a boot camp kind of situation against new G2, FPX. Who the fuck knows what teams are even going to exist in EU by the time they get there. But it's going to be good quality competition that they could potentially play against, and it's going to be a different style. So they can already start thinking about how teams in EU play and how to adjust stuff. Yeah. We've sent 2 pretty flexible, adjustable teams to Iceland from North America. I mean, obviously the best possible candidate in Sentinels, but with how the other teams played in this tournament, I feel pretty good about version 1. Like, I think that the representation from North America, weirdly, because you wouldn't have expected it to be V1, but it's actually pretty damn good.
If version 1 made it through, but they were looking like if they were looking relatively similar to what we saw in the first qualifier, but then they just made it through because they include Whippy and then they just get this boost of firepower and it looks like a honeymoon period, then that would be worrying. But I just don't think that's the case at all. Their willingness to change and how much they did change and succeeded with it, I think is pretty excellent for their chances going forward. Actually, the more we're talking, I feel even honestly more confident in them. Not necessarily, I don't think, they're going to, if they win, that would be astounding. I don't think that's in the cards, but
that would be the craziest run probably ever for like an esports team at this point.
I think they could make a good run though. I think they could genuinely be one of the top teams in the tournament. I do think that they're really tactically sound, and if they can I think if the individuals can show up on the days, that's what might make the most difference, because I have a lot of confidence in their preparation and their understanding of the game. For me, it's going to be whether or not they can frag with the best of the other teams. Yeah. And if they can on the day, I think that they could have a good run.
Okay, I want to talk about Sentinels now, because they are the next team to qualify for Reykjavik. It's what everyone was expecting. So I'm not really going to ask you guys questions of like, did you think Sentinels were going to make it or anything like that? What I want to know is this version of Sentinels looking good on the run up to Iceland? What is their form looking like? How do you guys perceive what their run was like here? Because they had some issues coming into this tournament. They had to qualify through challenges too. They looked a little bit shaky. They nearly fucking bombed out of the entire thing in a game against T1 after being dropped to the lower bracket. Like, this was not a good version of Sentinels coming into the challenges finals, I think. Were your doubts massaged by their run through the upper bracket?
Icebox was not good for them. I feel like Sentinels should just forfeit the map if they have to play Gambit on Icebox. They should just forfeit. They should just think, no, don't think so.
Well, thankfully Gambit aren't in, so they won't have to do that.
I know.
So.
Like, I'm thinking just more of like in general, like if they ever had to, like further international, they're like, no, definitely
no,
not.
Thank you. We're good.
Because like that was the one thing that really they had that one like awful Icebox game versus 100 Thieves, and then even still versus version 1, even though they won, they didn't look like incredible overall. Besides that, though, I think they look great.
I feel like on Icebox, could you actually bring up the Icebox games, Kurt, just so I can remember exactly which role switches they made? But I feel like they were just kind of lost in what they wanted to do. They didn't have a clear game plan, but they felt like Icebox is a map that they're comfortable on. I think they felt like to some extent maybe they could rely on Shazam's ability to just pop off on Jett on that map. He's just always been so consistent on it. But I think that they just, I honestly, I think by the time the tournament comes around, they should be fine on Icebox. I wouldn't be surprised if we eventually go to, yeah, they had Zoms playing Viper. I feel like they're going to need to, they need to switch the comp around a little bit. I don't think that they're entirely comfortable on the roles, and I feel like
I think Dapper on Viper is a lot better.
Yeah, I would be interested in seeing what they could do with Dapper on Viper, because Dapper's Viper was, I thought, very solid. When he was playing it on Bind, his Viper was really impressive. I think that that's something they could try and switch him onto potentially, but I don't know if I was happy with the Sentinels I saw in that they beat all of the other good teams on the way there. They beat V1 twice. They beat Cloud9. They beat 100 Thieves, sure. So they beat the requisite teams to have some confidence moving forward, I feel. The one worrying thing for me is still Ten's position on this roster. Notably the fact that they were really flumping when he was playing anything but the Reyna or Jett, and it has forced them into being a bit too reliant at times on his ability to do things individually. Now, his ability to do things individually is better on those roles, but it is a bit worrying for the overarching strategy on some of the maps, like Split.
Am I right in thinking that they ran Sick on Sage in the game against 100 Thieves, and they swapped that for the later versions on Icebox?
Yeah.
I think that the swap back to Sick playing Sova is definitely better, because Dapper just looked really uncomfortable on Sova.
Yeah.
The guy's really good, but
it's just not his agent.
It's just not his agent. Yeah, I mean, he can play the Cypher, he can play the Viper, he can play the Sage, and he looks good on all three of those. But taking him over to Sova just didn't work for them. So I think that'll be fine for them in the future.
Yeah, I mean, if you switch Zoms and Dapper, that implies that Zoms is going to play Sage, but I don't think that like makes too much sense. But either case, like I don't think that's going to be make or break their Icebox. I think that this is the weakest that Sentinels has looked. I mean, yes, it's better than the beginning where they lost to BBG, but I still don't. I don't see. I did not see a like crazy upheaval of the way that they're using tens or anything like this. They just felt like they got back to like a master's form, but they didn't improve. Maybe is kind of what I'm going for. It just feels like they're the weakest that we've ever seen from Sentinels. Now that doesn't mean that they're worse than V1 or anything. I still think they're the best team in NA, which says a lot about how they play. But I just don't think that I don't think that a lot of EU teams or anybody else really is seeing Sentinels as a massive threat, but that might be because of how quiet they are. And just generally how these games kind of went. Like the game against 100 Thieves, they almost threw that Haven game that we talked so poorly about against 100 Thieves.
Yeah.
Like some of this stuff, they got stomped on Split by Cloud9 when that's been one of their best maps ever.
I mean,
it's very meh.
Apart from the Split game, which I do think they have serious issues on. Well, I'll get to this afterwards, but I turned into a believer by the end of the tournament in Sentinels, and I think that I think for me, when I've been watching Sentinels over the last, I guess, year almost at this point, it seems like they're at their best, really, when their fundamentals and their play off each other is at the top. It's not really their strategy that pushes them to being, unbeatable in North America. It's how they react to what their opponents do, how they play off each other, and how tight those timings are. That's, to me, the difference between when Sentinels look poor and when Sentinels look great. And by the end of the tournament, they'd really tightened that shit up. And my thought, especially in like this grand final where they just bopped version 1, it really looked like they just were in control the whole time. All right, we're looking at a score here where it's 7-7, but my feel from watching the maps was they were always in control of the pace, they had a good read for what their opponents were doing, and they were able to close out the majority of the rounds, and they ended up winning the series pretty comfortably. So, to me, I think there might be a mental factor there where it's to do with their determination or motivation and focus when it gets to these bigger games. And I like that they peak later on in tournaments as well. They start a little bit soft, sure, but when the games get more important, Sentinels get better. They are very good at being able to react to their opponents, adapt to what they're doing, counter-strat them. They have 3 weeks coming into Reykjavik, and it's probably going to be some kind of double elim or at least GSL-style group system where they can get a read on what people are doing. I think this is still a dangerous team, and I think even the tens aspect, they had actually tightened that up really well by the end of the tournament. He was really sloppy at the beginning and terribly sloppy in the qualifiers, but they had got that shit tightened up by the end. And it might just be them needing that internal atmosphere of this actually matters.
This is not necessarily an unforeseen trajectory. I think if you go back and look at it in that, okay, they have tens, an unbelievable individual player comes into the team, honeymoon period, they roll everybody, everything's great. Then we come back down to reality where things need to be worked on, and he actually needs to be integrated into the team. Okay, what is he going to play? The Raze isn't really working. Okay, should we just throw him on the Reyna? What exactly are we doing here? What are the comps going to be? How do we even just, at the base level we were talking about with the fundamentals, are we playing off of him well? Is he being too individual? Are we unable to help him? Are we letting him have too much free reign at times? Which I think was the case. And then they rein it in. They start to get it all together. We've moved past the period where we're almost losing in the qualifier. Things are tightening up. And even within the meta, I think you could see Zombs having a better understanding of the Astra and the overall team play around the Astra. Good, it got better as the tournament went on. And things began to tighten up. And I think have left me on a note where I'm pretty hopeful of Sen moving into Iceland now. I think they just needed some time to work everything out and work things out further, though, in regards to some of the maps. Specifically, Split
their
and
map pool
Icebox.
Is actually quite weak right now.
Yeah, Split and Icebox need work.
Their map pool
is... their Haven, which...
Sure.
I think their Haven, they play Haven well because they're a good team and they understand the map, but I don't think the comp is the best comp that you could run there, and I don't think it's going to be great at catching teams off guard. It really is. Sentinels are like the embodiment of what you were talking about, Balla, when you're saying that they're trying to play the optimal style and react to their opponents and play as loose as possible in order to deal with whatever's coming at them. And that seems to be their game plan going in. I don't know how well that's really going to work because the only map where they look like I actually don't know if they do have a map where they look like they might be the best in the world. I don't think they have one right now. Which is a weird thing to say, but also Sentinels in the past have just been very well-rounded with their map pool. And that doesn't really feel like it's the case right now because their Icebox is a bit iffy and their Split looks like it's just not there. They're just kind of muddling through by virtue of they remember how to play Split and they're just kind of getting picks, and if they manage to, they win.
Honestly, I don't think they're going to get away with their actually, now that you mention Haven and I'm thinking about it more, I don't think that they're going to get away with their Haven in its current state against
Liquid and Fnatic are so good on Haven, unbelievably good.
Brazilian teams,
and the Brazilian teams are crazy on that map too.
Sentinels,
if they're really dealing with this leaving bind in the pool, like
I feel like they still have a good the fundamentals here is what drives Sentinels, right?
Definitely,
and
definitely,
it gives them enough opportunity, and I feel confident enough, especially since they're so flexible with their agents, that ideally. They're sort of like it's sort of like one of those AI where they're learning how to walk as the generation goes on, and as they do more steps, they get better. And that's essentially what's happening with Sentinels when we watch them play. And it's always been based around their flexibility and how fast that they adapt. So I still feel confident about this team, but it is a very interesting matchup when you deal against a very structured European squad. If you're going to deal with Fnatic, you're going to be okay, how does that Sentinels matchup against a team that already has everything drilled out and has ridiculous fragging power? With Liquid, I don't mind it as much because Liquid can sort of if Yampy's going to perform either vanish or he's going to pop off, I feel like there's more options, especially with how they play, than Fnatic.
I think that the actual we kind of get a preview, maybe a little bit, not really, about how they could play up against the weird comps of EU that we really don't see in NA, with the first V1 game against them or on Haven, where they actually played against the Viper and the Astra combo, and they kind of demolished it. To be honest, they had no problem adapting to it. That gives me a lot of hope when I actually watch that game, because it was just classic fundamentals, just adapting a little bit to how V1 were playing it. And I don't think that V1 played it the same as Liquid at all, but still just straight up rolled it. And version 1 being the best team out of everything else, maybe it looks good. Maybe that's good reason to hope. But the fact that both of these teams now, we both said, have to go through have to go through matches to start getting really, really good. Like the fact that they start off really bad, that puts a deep pit in my stomach for NA. I'm like, oh shit, bro. Like this is not gonna but also who knows what the format is, but that is terrifying.
But also remember that the quality of the teams at Iceland is going to be a mixed bag in all likelihood. Like nobody really expects the top Japanese team, top SEA team, the LATAM teams to be as good as teams like C9 or whatever that you would actually meet at the beginning of an NA bracket. Like the quality isn't just guaranteed to be better at Iceland. It is going to be a bit of a mixed bag. So they will still have opportunities to get.
Could all be worse.
They could all be worse. I mean, that could be a reality where NA is the best region and playing NA Challengers Finals is actually higher quality than there will probably be one region where the Challengers Finals was more difficult than Iceland. That is a reasonable thing that could occur within this format. I don't think it's likely at this first stage, but it could get there in the future. But yeah, I think they're going to be able to get their feet wet a bit. If you imagine there's like a group stage or a double bracket and they're seeded against
Crazy Raccoon or
like the LATAM team, whichever one makes it. I'm
trying to think about like how many of those teams are there though. Like there's 3 from Asia.
If
you can...
I mean,
there's 4 teams.
So you don't really want to go in playing against Gamelander first.
Yeah,
you could 100 like that could happen.
It could happen.
They could just get boomed or something like that. I hope that it's like a deep group stage. Like
I am hopeful though. I think they've ironed out the fundamentals with 10s, and past that, what is the next step? It is working on the tactical approach, the comps that they're going to play, and what tactics they're going to employ with the comps, and they have time to do that. I am hopeful for them.
I want to move on to Europe right now because we spent a long time. I think it was worthwhile, though, talking about all of the different NA teams because it's going to be the last time we see them for quite a while, unless they start making roster changes, in which case we'll refresh that. But moving over to Europe, Liquid and Fnatic are the teams that end up qualifying out for Reykjavik. Where were we even at in the bracket last week? I can't even remember.
I'll tell you where we're at. We were pretty much dealing with.
We were still thinking FPX was unbelievable,
two
right?
teams got eliminated at the time. There was 2 teams were eliminated, and then we were about to see.
We're still the winners match.
We thought FPX was about to dominate, and we were kind of split.
I'm over FPX.
We were thinking it was either going to be Guild or Fnatic.
Okay, well let's start with FPX.
I'm over it.
Tell me why.
No, because they choke every tournament. I'm done with it. I've seen enough. I mean, I genuinely, what inspired confidence in me was that I thought Gambit were an incredible team.
Yeah.
And the fact that they had come back from quite the deficit against Gambit in their match inspired confidence in me to the extent that, okay, I don't think FPX are going to throw this one away. Surely not, right? They could come back against Gambit, team of that.
Well, especially because they were playing Liquid, and Liquid we had kind of been like, okay, Liquid looked good, but they're still kind of feast or famine, and they weren't looking extremely well rounded like FPX. That was the shocker to me, is that they lost 2-0 to Liquid. That's the thing.
And they got boomed.
They got fisted.
I mean, it wasn't close.
Yeah. No, it wasn't.
Which I mean, again, done with them. They've choked every tournament. I've seen enough. They look amazing, and then they throw away every tournament. Aside from they won a qualifier. Yeah. I mean, listen, I've seen up until they can prove in a big tournament that they're able to make it past
until you're going to be back on the copium.
No, I'm genuinely.
I know it's going to happen.
Nothing positive about FPX until they actually leap over the hurdle of not choking out of a big tournament.
They did win. They did win Challengers 1.
What
the 50K tournament with all of the top European teams to qualify for Challengers finals. So,
I don't know. Yes, but I don't. Is it dumb that I don't rate that really? Or highly?
I think.
I mean, this is the real important shit now.
Sure.
So yeah, sure. I guess they won that, but I don't. it doesn't carry the same weight to me as some of the other tournaments have.
I think it's fair to give them the MV treatment like now, where it's like, yeah, they literally just can't get past the hump in a big tournament. I think it's totally fair.
The weird thing about FPX though is that they always look like the best team coming in. You know,
Yep.
like they would have been your number one pick. Envy isn't like that. Envy isn't the number one pick coming in, and then they get outpaced.
They look so
you're
much
right,
better
sorry.
because they have so much different shit. Like nobody's playing like FPX. You know, that's why they look so much better. That's why it's the number one pick every single time.
FPX also
I think we value that a little way too much, to be honest.
They also are just getting results. They get results against all the top teams coming into tournaments, and they look phenomenal doing it too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think there's a couple of aspects here. First of all, Liquid did change a lot for this game. It would be unfair to say they lost to the same Liquid that we were predicting them to play against.
No, I mean, I didn't expect to see this comp from Liquid.
This comp, nobody expected. Liquid split that they played in the finals against Fnatic, totally new composition as well, to boom Fnatic and end up taking the win in Challengers finals. Liquid have done an enormous amount of work to reinvent themselves very recently. And it's been slowly over time. Like they integrated Yampi, they integrate a new composition on a couple of maps on the Haven. They integrate a new composition. Well, actually, first of all was Bind, right? They played a Bind comp that was a bit like this, that was really cool. And then they were still playing normal shit on Haven and Split. Then they introduced the Haven comp. Then they introduced the Split comp. And it's just added so much depth to their entire map pool to the point where they did just win Challengers finals. They are currently the best team in Europe. But it doesn't stop me from being disappointed that FPX could not figure out the answer whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know, in that Haven game, I went back and reviewed it recently. They actually played pretty decently on the first half. They managed to draw it level at 6-6. And then when FPX were on defense, they just couldn't figure out what to do against Liquid. They gave them way too much space, and Liquid just ambled into the sites and exec'd on them. And it felt like FPX just kind of missed out on the meta right now.
That's the dangerous thing about playing a comp like this. It has so much execute power that you want to stay away from that. You know, you want to give it to them, just let them have it because they have so much execute power. But then all of a sudden, there's also so much post plant power where it's just like, you have to be in the middle. If you're not in the middle, stopping them planting, like you're just screwed. So I find that this is like something very difficult to adapt to, but they didn't find anything on their defense, like at all. No ways to stop anything. The execute power was just way too much. The players individually were definitely fumbling. Like I think that's fair to say. That Shadow wasn't finding the impact. Xeppaa wasn't finding the impact. Angel as well. I mean,
Angel had a rough game,
and they were getting like Yampi with a Killjoy op on both sides, was just like
he was rolling
always
them.
getting first bloods like every single time because they were trying to find something, but they didn't have the right answers. I think that was the same thing in against Gambit when they ended up losing. It's just like they got FPX'd in my mind, right?
That brings me to my question is because it seemed like in this game a real lack of being able to adapt to their opponent and figure out the right answers. Is it Angel? Is Angel the problem? Is he just a double-edged sword where you get all of the amazing aspects of Angel, but also you're not going to be able to get the performance in the big games? It's impossible to know, I guess, unless you're in the comms and can compare how he communicates or how he's like in lower level matches to these. But
I feel like that puts way too much like onus on like one player to make all the adaptations, right? Like you can be an IGL and everyone else should still be contributing. Like ideally the other players on FPX are not just robots hooked up to the Angel CPU and they only know how to execute Angel's commands. Otherwise they are useless. Like to me, that defines then the rest of the team isn't that good because no one else is making any adaptations. And if you're like the best team, if you're the best team and you are just incapable of adapting, that means that you are no longer the best team, right? That means these players aren't the best. They're good. They're really good. But if you can't adapt, then that's like a problem because no game, you're always going to run up against shit that's like going to go crazy. Like imagine FPX, like if they somehow magically, like every other team, like they just said that, guys, we lost the ability to play mouse and keyboard anymore. We've gone blind, deaf, and dumb. We can't play games anymore. We send them to Iceland, and then Brazil pulls out some wacky, crazy shit, and FPX just falls over. You know?
I got a Yoru running in.
Yeah.
I'm pretty disappointed. I'm pretty disappointed. And also, the more I think about it, even with you referencing the challengers that they won, they just washed Guild in the finals, who didn't look good in this story.
No, they didn't look good. Well,
and
that was a Josh and the Josh.
And they didn't have the competition of Dirk Fnatic yet. Liquid weren't at this Liquid form yet. So
yeah,
I am. That being said, though, I am disappointed. And honestly, now when you see this happen, and I think, and you look back and I'm like, how could we not see this coming again? How could we not? Like, no part of me, I'm like, surely not this time, right?
But the thing is,
it's painful.
The teams they
y'all's
lose to,
fault, man.
It's painful.
It's y'all's fault. Last fucking episode, I was not here to stop you guys for going on the FPX is unbelievable bullshit. I couldn't stop it.
They
I
are.
was listening. I'm like, no, they didn't do this.
They are unbelievable, but they aren't.
Yeah. No, it's kind of crazy. I also feel like I'm when you look back at it through the lens of history, the teams that they have lost to in the previous Masters and this Masters have gone on to win the like Challengers finals. You know, they end up losing to Ascend and they lose to Liquid here as well. And I'm feeling like there is a choking aspect to it. I don't think their players step up. I don't think that they adapt very well, etc. But also, I feel like it's a bit of the if you're the front runner, that it's what's the best way of phrasing this? That oftentimes the teams that are winning in Europe are the teams that make big drastic changes to their style right before the tournament, or somebody who's unknown that goes on a run. You know, Heretics and Fnatic made the first strike finals. It wasn't G2 and FPX. It was a very tactically good Fnatic and a Heretics that caught a lot of people off guard playing a contact style that they weren't ready for. And then you have Ascend making their nasty run all the way through. And then this time you have Liquid and Fnatic, two teams that have just made very recent changes and have like improved dramatically. I feel like there's almost a problem with being the early leader. It's like when you see bicycle races and shit, and the guy that's pedaling up front wears himself out, and the guy behind is just in the slipstream and nicks ahead, and then they're able to win the entire race. That's what it feels like for FPX right now. They're leading the pack and showing, and like constantly, they're like the benchmark for success, and yet they're not the team that is making that crazy move at the end to be the winner. They're just always they're always the leader, but they don't win.
It feels like they are trying to set themselves up for that, though, with the
comp switches and stuff. Yeah.
It feels like they're trying to set themselves up for it.
But when you actually see the teams that have won here, Liquid and Fnatic aren't doing that. Because what FPX are doing is taking a concept for their comp and tweaking small elements of it to make it seem different. Yeah. But the overall concept of their comps is still pretty similar. They have a couple of different ones that they could run on Bind, for example. But when you look at their split comps, they're broadly similar, but with a couple of different switches. What Fnatic and Liquid have done is have wildly different compositions when they're coming in, or wildly different play styles, and that is different. That's not them trying to throw off their opponent.
But is that intentional or just
curveball.
Because they are getting better as it goes on, right? Like, I don't feel like Liquid has a master plan where, like, okay, Yampy's gonna feed now for 3 weeks, and then we make it into the finals. We swap up our entire comp. Link plays only Brim. Like, obviously, it's an evolution for these teams. It's not a calculated decision.
Yeah. But I do think that there is a calculated aspect to them, for Liquid in particular, figuring out the meta and what they perceive to be the strongest right now in the way that you play around the Viper and the Brim and the Sky, and trying to apply that concept to as many maps as possible.
I think that FPX is the opposite of NA in the terms of like the optimal play style, where they kind of flex a little bit with like slightly different adjustments. Sometimes it's pretty massive, you know, in terms of like Angel playing Reyna on certain maps and like Sometimes it's pretty massive, the switches that they make. But you're right, it's not like wide in the sense that you're completely changing the game plan over and over on different maps. I mean, you can see it in this tournament against Gambit, for example, where they start off on split playing against them on they have Sova on the map for some reason. It's like, yeah, it's using it to catch these teams off of guard, but it's not a massive switch like a Liquid, like a Fnatic, where they're hiding something completely and then all of a sudden there's a massive new game plan at you. I also think that they're kind of thinking a little bit too much about like to me the FPX is classic is always them like coming up and they have a slight adjustment, right? And that booms the other team, that gets them to win, right? They're always doing that. I mean, I've talked about it like for First Strike, for example, when they went up against Fnatic or some NFC back then, they made a change where they weren't playing Viper on Bind, for example. They did it against Ascent. They kind of tried to switch up things a little bit. Gambit specifically, they stopped playing Sova the second time they played around, you know? And
they go back to their normal when it gets to the big game.
That is very dangerous when you come up against a team who does something completely new, where you've never seen it before, you know?
Yeah.
Like the game on Haven. Yeah. Like you have no clue that's coming. So they're trying to like slightly counterpick them. And then it's just like, whoa, what the hell is this? I've never seen this before. I've never played against this in my life. You know?
Yeah.
That has got to hurt when they're trying to make these micro counter adjustments against a team in the first place.
Definitely. I do think though that there was definitely an element of choking, like the watching Bind specifically too, where Liquid weren't actually running anything particularly new. It just felt like their heads were out of it, and
I just think I think the individuals failed to show up in these games too.
Yeah,
you can't get. It's rare that you get that convincingly beaten with your individuals still on point.
Sure.
You know? Yeah. I mean, even if you go back to...
I mean, it's so reminiscent of them losing to Summon FC on Bind.
That's what I was going to say. Even if you go back to that, it's... Yeah. Listen, I'm not talking about... I'm done with FPX. I'm not talking about FPX again.
Okay.
Until... I'm serious. I'm not talking... No FPX talk until they qualify for Berlin. Or unless there's some change or something. But if they win another qualifier and beat Guild, I don't care. It means nothing to me. It means nothing.
Well, let's talk about Gambit then as well, because that was the team that ended up actually making it out of that group with Liquid. Yeah. I thought that Liquid and Gambit would end up clashing, and that would be an awesome match where Gambit would be able to take advantage of Liquid. I don't even know whether I believe that anymore, because Liquid fundamentally changed their map pool so much with these new comps that point kind of fell out the window. Gambit looked awesome, though. I mean, I loved watching Gambit. They turned the fuck up in that FPX game. They really performed. They made the right adaptations to what Fnatic were doing, and they looked awesome. It is such a pity that they weren't able to also go to Reykjavik, because I feel like they deserved it.
Yeah. I mean, well, I suppose they'll probably have a spot in Berlin.
Yeah, I think CIS will probably get a guaranteed their own spot, right?
Yeah, I mean, they are an excellent team. They were the nice surprise of EU for me. Having not really watched them before, and I was very impressed. And listen, honestly, after FPX lost to the first game to Liquid, I just knew it was over. I knew they were going to lose to Gambit the second time. And FPX came into that, and it looked like they had adapted to the Gambit attack on Icebox.
Yeah, they were very prepared for it.
They expected what Gambit would be doing in regards to the mid aggression, I think specifically. They were very set up for that. And when Gambit went for those mid plays, they were not finding the same success. But then I felt that the exact same thing happened in reverse when the sides flipped. And Gambit were well prepared for FPX's attack, and they were able to lock it up. I was very impressed with Gambit in both series, even the one that they lost, honestly. I was happy with the Gambit I saw. I think they've got quite a good future.
I think especially the FPX game was just a matter of FPX not showing up on the day, getting boomed because of the day before against Liquid, and individually Gambit showing the hell up and just continuing with the nice slight adjustments, and honestly fantastic prep from Gambit that they had in the day previous. When you came down to it, though, it definitely felt like FPX just weren't there, because I don't know how many times I saw Nats put a camera on Split like in some backwards corner where they just like don't see it, and he's just like looking at them, and they're just like, "Yep, here we go, get ready for the split." And then Nats kills 3 of them, and
Nats
Shade
is
Off
so
is just
good.
absolutely popping off.
Nats is
These
an
guys
animal.
are ridiculous, man. I can say something good about every single one of these guys.
Yeah,
Shade Off,
genuinely
the
across
clutches, like Nats, his camera. Like, what the hell is that? Who's ever seen that? Like, what is that? How does he get it up there? I don't even know. That thing is massive.
Who runs Cypher on this map? And they might be the best Icebox team in the world as well. I know that they lost it to FPX in their previous series, and they don't end up making it through. But I really feel like there's a good argument for Gambit being the best Icebox team in the world. They're just the ideas they have on this map are just phenomenal. If their players play around those ideas, they feel so oppressive to deal with.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, they were so good, and I really wish we were seeing them. But I mean, Liquid Fnatic were just slightly better. I mean, that game was really fun to watch on both sides. A lot of really fun stuff. Obviously, Fnatic, you're never gonna get disappointed when you watch them, and you're never gonna have a moment where it's like, well, they just didn't bring anything new. There's always something cool, and Gambit was there with it.
Yeah,
I mean,
I felt that Gambit prepared.
CIS could be good too. Go ahead. Sorry, Balla.
Sorry, last point. I think that they prepared for their opponents with their basic stuff more than any other team.
Who? Fnatic?
Gambit.
Oh, Gambit. Right.
Yeah, so Fnatic and Liquid, they have like their own preparation that just strategic whatever that's coming out. But Gambit specifically, when I'm watching them, they have all these little like nice little tricks that they're using that are very clearly like used in preparation for something that the other team is going to do. Like FPX, I saw that all the time. They're using like a deeper Sage wall on Icebox to counter the way that they play that Viper wall in Kitchen. Where you could see over it, whereas you wouldn't be able to do that against any other team.
Yeah.
It was just really nice.
Yeah,
I feel like this gives a lot of hope for CIS as a region, honestly. Like, obviously, the Gambit's by far the best team to come out of here.
That was a good round.
When you see a really like a region that's historically not had like a lot of great international representation, like they have good players, but when you see a team of full CIS players come out and they look like they could have gone to Iceland, honestly, like they could have, like they definitely 100% could have. That means that there is talent in the region and that they could potentially continue to be a powerhouse like moving forward. Like comparatively, like Turkey, where like you have 300,000 kajillion Turkish people screaming about, Turkish Valorant, and like everyone's like, oh, Turkey, yeah. And they look pretty lackluster the entire time. But CIS actually, like, the hype was backed up. And I feel confident now about the region potentially going forward.
Yeah. Turkey didn't turn up this time around. And I think, Oxygen did fairly decently. I think Footballers getting knocked out was just boomed the entire region because they are, like, historically have been the better team, at least recently. And the fact that they weren't able to turn up when it mattered just meant that Turkey lost its best team early on, and Oxygen were kind of capped in terms of what they were able to do. I want to talk a bit about Fnatic's side of the bracket then, and what they did in order to beat Gambit, how good they look. I feel like a lot of people are still rating Fnatic as potentially the best team coming out of EMEA, even though they ended up losing to Liquid. I've seen that a lot of people in my chat and a lot of the discussion online seems to be hype around Fnatic rather than Liquid right now. And I think some of it is extraordinarily well deserved. Firepower is phenomenal. Durka and Doma are a ridiculous duo at the front. Their tactics are all really good too. The thing that lets them down, in my opinion, is the map pool. They're split. They're playing that triple duelist that just isn't going to go anywhere against teams that are good at split. It just simply isn't. They need to rework that. And they lost Icebox to Liquid after... I mean, their Icebox looks amazing on their attacking side. But then they lost, I think, every round to Liquid. I think they only won a single one, maybe, in their game against Liquid when they were up at the half because their attack side is so strong. So if they tweak that, their Haven is already world-class. Their Bind is already world-class. And if they get Icebox on the same level, I think this team is going to be nasty good.
Yeah, I think it was another scenario on this Fnatic Gambit game as well, where Fnatic just looked really well prepared for Gambit. I think specifically even in regards to Nats and how he likes to set up. It seemed like they were more prepared for his style of play than
Boaster wins a 1v3 here as well, by the way.
Yeah.
What the hell has that guy been drinking?
Boaster's individual has been pretty nasty.
I mean, Boaster was like out-fragging. I think he out-fragged Doma on one of the maps in the finals. Like he actually had like a crazy, it was Haven when they absolutely dumpstered them. I mean, Boaster just, I guess he didn't out-frag him, but still, like it was one frag off. But
yeah,
I do have a lot of confidence in Fnatic, though. I think that they're a team that will benefit from time as well, because I think I feel like at the moment they make up for a lot of the lack of time together with just a lot of like fast hit, big execute, we run at your face rounds. And I think they'd given a bit more time, they will be an even further well-rounded team. And that can work to an extent now, especially when things are going well and you have your star players popping and everything's clicking. But I think that they're a team that will benefit from more time. So I have even higher hopes, I think, actually going into Iceland for them with more prep.
Yeah. And they just destroyed Guild as well. We didn't even really talk about that, but I had a bit of faith in Guild that their team play would work. Those guys, I mean, you want to talk about a choke? That was a choke as well. Yassine had one of the worst games of his career, worst matches of his career. The first two maps, he was just non-existent, and Boaster did literally no fragging as well. It was just Safe and Leo desperately trying to drag that team to victory in the first couple of maps, and then by the time they woke up, it was too late.
Yeah, God, this is what Fnatic do so many fast hit rounds right now. They really do. But
they also combo it with Magnum lurking extremely well.
They're really good. They're good rounds. So don't get me wrong. But are
you concerned for like if Durka ends up getting shut down at Iceland that they lose that firepower?
Yeah, to some extent, sure. Yeah, I think that having that many fast hit rounds in your overarching span of attack, I think works less and less as time goes on. And I think especially when you factor in the everything is working period where you have a sick fragger at the helm. But that being said, but Fnatic, I don't worry about it with them because I trust the system in place. I trust Boaster behind the team, and that they will further expand how they approach the game as time goes on. But I mean, in regards to Guild, it was a bit sad. And I think that, honestly, I don't think the Yoru panned out. I feel like they should have left that as a one and done. I think that on Haven, that just, you could see how ready the opposing teams were, like, just guns trained on hell. And here he comes. Like, it was just.
But to me, the entirety of Guild's attack was so poor on that day, where they just couldn't get anything going, and I think a lot of it just came down to Yassine not being able to play. I don't know what his overall stats were on attack for that match, but they got to be atrocious because just the eye test, he wasn't getting as much work done.
Well, I mean, even on Ascent, he went 7-20.
Yeah.
So that's probably the worst scoreline I've ever seen for Yassine.
And I think he got like 2/3 of his kills on the defensive side, maybe even more, maybe more like 3/4 of his kills on Haven, the final map, were on the defensive side, where he was making up for Safe having a bit of a weak game. But yeah, sad performance, but at the end of the day, we've got two very good representatives, I think, from Europe going towards Reykjavik.
I'm really happy with both the teams, honestly. I think in many different regards, I think both teams peaked at the right time. Yeah. Both seem to be on the upwards trajectory. And also just in terms of the players that are there, great representatives. Boaster's great to have there. Scream.
Scream, sure. Yampy, it's really cool to see as well. Because Yampy recently just got unbanned from CSGO, remember? Yeah. So, if they had done trash in this tournament, I feel like the lure of going towards the game that he loved and grew up playing would have been too much. The guy would have been back.
Winning's fun.
Pure speculation, but winning is fun.
Winning, it's real fun to win.
Winning real good. They have the potential right now, and I guess their form would imply that they have a great shot of winning Reykjavik and being the best team in the world.
And I still feel like Yampy is the key. I really do for that team.
His
even-
opping is so consistent. I don't think I've seen a more.
It is great.
He doesn't take the like crazy ego duels and stuff of someone like CNED and Waddell, where he's just, those guys work magic with the op. Yampy doesn't do that, but if you're on his crosshair, you are dying 100% of the time. He just hits everything, and his brain for where the opponents are and how to get into positions that they're going to struggle to deal with is magical. And how do you punish him? Well, I mean, you can try and trade him out when he's playing the Killjoy and stuff like that because he doesn't have the mobility. But most of the time, it's uncomfortable to play those kind of roles opping because if you miss your shot, you're fucked. Just don't miss. Just don't miss. It seems like someone told Yampy that and he was like, oh, okay then. I'll just not miss.
Good tip. Thanks, Slicky.
Yeah, thanks,
For
Slug
Liquid,
Club.
though, if they were hadn't adjusted. Like if they hadn't changed, if they had somehow come out playing the same style and miraculously beaten FPX and like made it to finals,
like
I
they
would have
did
been
against
more worried.
BDS. Like I didn't
Yes,
have that much
yes.
confidence in them when they beat BDS, but now this is different.
Now I'm really confident in them because now I'm like, oh my god, this is like they bought it. They play Brimstone full time? Like what? Like I mean they've picked out the DLC hero that we haven't seen in a long time, and it actually was incredible. Like the synergy they worked with it and getting that long molly back as well to help lock down sites and having the ult, which has always been amazing for like stopping plants. So like I mean I loved Liquid's look here. So I'm actually way more confident about them now. I'm super confident they could potentially win.
Yeah, before this tournament, I was like, oh, I don't know about Jampy. Like, I don't know what he's doing. You guys were telling me about how, like, he's dashing into weird places and finding himself uncomfortable. And it still felt like he was kind of doing that sometimes, but it felt like it worked. And also, he was calm, much more calmer, especially when he got put on Killjoy, obviously, for very obvious reasons. But felt like all weekend, it was much more, it kind of felt more like an NA opper, where he's on an angle, he'll post on it, and then he'll get out and back to safety and back up to another angle, and not necessarily like the CNED like you're talking about. And I think all of that works really, really well. The adjustments that he's made from 2 weeks ago to now have been fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
They really have. And I want to talk a bit about Liquid's map pool as well, because their Ascent win rate at the moment is spectacular. And that's actually one of the maps where they're still playing what I would consider to be pretty default shit.
Yeah.
But then the improvements they've made to their bind with the introduction of, the comp that essentially Fnatic started, their bind is now really good. It's not as good as Fnatic's, but it's really good. Their Icebox was like a permaban pick, and they still managed to do extremely well against Fnatic too. So that really impressed me. It feels like if they put a bit more work into that, they could have just no insta-ban, which is insanely powerful going into a tournament like this. Their Haven, the map, the like system they've got for Haven is gonna boom teams. Fnatic is probably, I think Fnatic's the best team in the world on Haven right now, and they managed to get a win over Liquid with just how well they're playing it. But you have to adapt to how Liquid plays Haven. You can't just play your own game. And we do have some really adaptable teams coming in from North America, so they'll have to figure out what Liquid is doing and deal with it. Because that no duelist comp is it's oppressive when you combine it with Yampy's op.
Do you think they're going to keep that?
I don't know, but I think they'll keep a similar theme, right? I think
that's probably likely.
I think the theme, the concept is really working for Liquid. And the overarching concept to me is play a lot of Viper, play a lot of stuff to delay hits when they're coming into sites, the Sage, the Viper wall, this kind of stuff. And use that instead of aggressive info gathering. And it's kind of like Liquid, especially when Liquid play on Haven, the utility they have to slow down site hits always means that rotates are going to come. And so when you're attacking, you're really struggling to like force util out of them, force fakes, so that you can actually get onto a site for free. Because otherwise, there's like always going to be 3 guys back site, whether you're attacking C or A. And if you go for fast B hits, they end up having so much utility to push you in mid. And if you try and hold the site, they've just got fuck tons of mollies. It's a very difficult style to deal with, and I'm in full credit to Fnatic for dealing with it. But yeah, Liquid have just got a really well-rounded map pool right now. And even Split, which was looking quite weak for them, they lost to Fnatic's triple duelist comp in their first time that they matched up. They've changed that so that now they have the instead of running the Brim and the Breach, they integrated the Viper there as well. And so they're starting to run very different things on that map. I think that given it some time, they've really hit on something that works for this meta. The more they can flesh it out, the better they'll get. And to me, it only comes down to choking discussions. That's it, to be honest. Because I really do think that's a very valid concern still for guys like Cryptix and Soulcast and Link. They've actually stepped up in these series more so than they've crumbled. But is that gonna continue? Because I'm still remembering the losses of Liquid before, where they just fell to pieces.
I agree, but I would exclude Link from that list.
I mean, Link boomed FPX.
Yeah,
Link
he did.
I think
FPX.
I think Link is, he's shown that he can operate under the pressure. I think enough that I wouldn't consider him on that list at this point. But very valid, and also, I mean, it's a different. It's a
completely different environment.
Like, well, so
yeah.
We might be like hype about Link's clutches overall in the past couple of weeks, but it is a completely different environment. When we were talking earlier about like how the V1 Cloud9 game was scrappy, I expect every single one of these games to be so scrappy, man. Just because of the nerves, just because of the inexperience on LAN, and even for the EU guys, I feel like if it wasn't FPX, even FPX, man, like pretty much any of these teams right now that have qualified for ICELAND so far, except maybe Sentinels, I feel like are very inexperienced. Oh, V1 as well.
I mean, V1 has some good experience.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if
I feel like NA has much more than EU.
Yeah.
Yeah.
EU, it's a lot of players that haven't had their time in the limelight yet as much. But I mean, Liquid still does have Scream and Yampy. Those are some people who are pretty damn experienced when it comes to.
It's not going to be afraid though. Those Brazilian teams.
No, they're not going to show simply do not give a fuck. Simply do not give a fuck. Yeah. The other question that I wanted to go into right now, because I think we've already touched on like our thoughts on the teams as they head into Reykjavik. I want to talk about the meta a little bit because I want to get your guys' thoughts on what is actually strong right now. If you look at the pick rates for NA, I think it was 72% Astra being played. Yep. Whereas in North America, whereas in Europe, it was sat somewhere more at like 30, 40, something like that. And Brimstone is being played by Liquid all over the place. I mean, on maps where you would say Astra is just straight up better, like Split, they're still trying to play the Brim and get value out of it there. And a lot of people are talking about the post-plant stuff, but Liquid doesn't even play post-plants that much. Not enough to make the Brim viable. To me, a lot of it comes down to like their use of the molly on defense and their use of the smokes on defense as well. But I want to get your thoughts too on like who has the more accurate read on the meta currently. What do you guys think is powerful heading into Reykjavik?
Personally,
I have a very tame take, so I'll let you guys go first.
Give us a tame take.
Give us a tame take. Yeah.
Is that both of these styles are going to work very, very well? I don't think there's any counters. I'm sorry. Look. I fucking warned you guys, okay? Look.
I didn't think it was going to be that tame.
The strengths of Brim compared to Astra is that he has a little bit more like damaging execute power where he will literally force you out of positions. He will literally force certain things because of his molly. And Astra, her gravity well in combo. It has to be comboed with something. Otherwise, it's not even really that good. NA does use it to clear angles, but you only have one during an execute. Same thing with a molly, but with all the power, the fact that they're running the double controller is the more important part, not the Brim versus Astra, in my mind.
Right.
Well, first of all, I think
watch all you motherfuckers are gonna say I agree now.
No. Well, first of all, Viper's just busted.
Yeah. I think we can all agree on that. I think we could agree on that when we saw the patch notes, to be honest.
Even more so now. I mean, it's just.
Teams just get boomed.
When you see a round where
it's so strong.
I have visions when I think of Viper now. This one round with V1 against Cloud9, where Whippy would just set up the poison cloud above B main, and there was a round where I was down till. It was getting down to the final seconds at C9, needed to execute, and they just send Leaf jumping through the poison cloud into B, just dies immediately. I mean, they have to run through. Everyone's taking 50. They're just all dead. I mean, it's just hopeless. Yeah. I mean, the Viper's just busted. I think Astra's also busted right now.
Yeah.
I think Astra is just sick. If you have the coordination to play off of it, I don't see much of a reason not to run her right now. I think she's pretty sick.
That's what I'm trying to think through in my head is why wouldn't Liquid's comps work if they just played Astra instead of the Brim? And I feel like they still would. I don't know really. I guess for like the advantages of Brim with the Molly on defense, but you can still use the suck to delay. Like that's still
Not
an
as much as the
extremely.
Burn Molly.
It is not, and also it doesn't. It especially comboing with Viper because the thing is now. Before, you had a smoke. It's like, okay, sometimes you throw a nano swarm in there. Maybe you throw a molly. It's like, okay, I push this, take some damage. Now, if it's Viper plus Brimstone Molly, you just vaporize. You just die. You literally just die. Like that's the thing that's so annoying about, and why I think the synergy is really cool here is that like the Viper means if you combo with any sort of molly, you are dead. It is not like okay, you're going to make it through. No, you're dead. It's instant death. Like you cannot push a choke when you combine the Viper, when Viper smoke with a molly. You just can't.
I think
you can't push
less. I think it's less insta dead for Astra Viper than any other.
Yeah,
sure,
but
because
that's why I like the
gravity
Brimstone though. That's why I like the Brimstone though more so because the thing is Liquid. I think the really interesting synergy with Brimstone with Viper is that like comparatively you have like the smokes last longer, so like that's always nice, like you get a little bit longer lasting smoke, but also on top of that you have the options to set up your mollies more because you can put the Viper smoke and then Brimstone molly, right? And like you're not going through that doorway, you're not. Or if you put the Brimstone smoke and the Brimstone smoke and a snake bite, it's really hard to get through there too because the smoke's lasting so long.
You can't even see it.
And you can't even see it, So I feel like there's a really nice synergy with Brimstone actually with Viper currently because of the fact that it's not Brimstone itself that's great. It's more of the fact that like you're enabling Viper's utility a lot more than Brimstone. And that's what's cool about the synergy with Brimstone. But I feel like overall Astra is just better. Like I think it works if you're Liquid and you have like the perfect idea of how you want to play the comp. But Astra, you just get so much more utility with. So in my opinion, I like the Astra comp more. I agree with Wyatt. I think Astra is like mega super busted because you're not reliant on any one agent to get value out of Astra. Every agent can get value out of Astra.
It's
like
crazy,
literally and also teams got so much better at Cosmic Divide. I didn't see like giant gaps. Like I finally started seeing Cosmic Divides that just like cut off chokes and like just a small area so they didn't have the rest of the site to work with. And so and now with the Cosmic Divides are better too. It just her kit is overall so much better than Brim's.
I'd still rather have a better fragger on Brim than Astra because of the value of the ults. I still think the Brim ult is better in terms of execute power and post plants and everything.
Sure, the Brim ult is always excellent for any composition, any map, basically.
Add all that with Viper and like so much shit flying at you, like It's much harder these days to deal with it than like with a single smoker or a single initiator or whatever.
I feel like as well there's merit to the idea that Liquid are using the Brim utility and not just the molly but also the smoke that lasts fucking forever to buy time for the Viper utility to essentially be up constantly. So like when the Viper wall drops, you want some utility to be there to stop them pushing, and you can disrespect Astra utility. You can't disrespect the Brim molly. You can't. I mean, if you can push through through a Brim smoke, I guess, but you can't get inside of a Brim smoke and dominate it in the same way as you can with an Astra or an Omen smoke, right? Where you literally want to be inside of them because it's like a little Thunderdome that you can control. So it feels like there's a lot of natural synergy there with their compositions. What do you guys think about like the Sky stuff that people are running? The fact that people haven't really integrated too much of the Viper stuff into Ascent at all? Like the Ascent comps are pretty basic right now. Do you think everything's going to end up being just Viper, Astra, or some combination of the two? Or some like combination of one or the other on all maps? Is it just too strong to not run everywhere?
I feel like you should have at least one or the other on every map right now. I think both of them just have. I think the two agents right now have the best. Those are the two best utility kits in the game right now. I feel to start your base from of what you're trying to do with a comp.
Yeah,
I think they're both just too good at the moment.
I think you can get away with not having Viper. I think Astra is like a must run though. I think you can get away on certain maps. Most of the time, I would say like you should be playing Viper still because she's just so strong. But like, I kind of don't mind like teams that weren't playing Viper on like let's say Split. I think you can get away with it. You know, you can replace it with like something else like a Sky or something like that. Like I don't mind not having Viper on Split, but every other map, I feel like Astra's Viper is just like it's just so much value, and you just have to respect Viper's utility so much. You have to respect Viper's utility just so much.
Easy to use both in conjunction, though.
I feel like Astra is the most viable current single controller. Omen is the next, but I don't think that people really want to run Omen right now because of the value you can get when you do run others. But I don't think that like the Viper single controller only like on Icebox do I get like a huge like this is really good. But
yeah.
They're so good. Viper Astra or Viper Brim, in my mind, are really strong, no matter how you cut it.
I mean, damn, it's going to be fucking cool watching those teams play. Let's get on to some juice. We've got I've only got another 10 minutes because I'm
Jesus
moron.
Christ.
Yep.
We got some juice.
All right, let's
You're
get to
gonna
the juice
need the
quickly.
juice because this is gonna be quick.
Yeah.
Let's quickly get to the juice.
Okay, Cutler benched from TSM.
Yep.
It feels like TSM needed to make a move for a while, and they have tried to make moves. They've tried to bring in Brax. They benched Hayes for a while. Now what the fuck is going on? What the fuck is going on, and is this the right move? Question to the group.
Sure. Is this the right move? Sure. Cutler hasn't been impactful enough on the team. And maybe he can, honestly, sometimes you can find, he might be able to find a higher level of play on another team in a different system.
Sure.
Where he doesn't have to be so far in the in the back in regards to just there's like 3 other guys who are trying to be stars on the team. So maybe he can find more success on another team, and it just wasn't the right fit at the end of the day. But yeah, this needed to happen. Does more than this need to happen, though? Probably. Is this enough to save the team? No. Is Brax coming in enough to save the team? No. I don't think this is going to actually... I can't see this actually taking them up to the next level where they could be making a deep run and maybe, are they in contention for Berlin? No. I don't see it happening.
Yeah.
What is benching Cutler fix for this squad exactly? You know,
I don't know.
Like, I don't feel like that's the thing, right? What does it fix for them?
I don't know. I don't know who's IGLing for them. I don't know what the roles are going to be. I mean,
I guess is the theory. Brax is a better fragger.
I think someone.
But it's never been like a frag issue. I feel for this squad, right?
I think someone leaked the scrim results recently when they were playing against some team. I don't.
Get Scrimbucks out of here.
No, I'm not talking about Scrimbucks. I'm talking about the roles that they were playing, because I think Brax was playing like Sova or something. At the very least, I think that they're experimenting with different shit, right?
I mean,
I'm not saying that's going to be their roles going forward, but they're still mixing stuff around, trying to find out what works for them.
That is nothing new.
No.
And also,
Fucking
again, bragging should not be the cause of change and concern on this team. If you're from on the within,
You have Sabros and Wardell, like
bro, you have Sabros and Wardell and Drone. Fragging should never be the issue.
And even Hayes has been fragging perfectly fine recently.
Yeah,
It's just not been a fragging issue. They're just lost in the sauce.
No, you summed it up correctly.
Yeah.
I don't see a future. Like, yeah, I see a future if they continue to make changes. Is this the one that's gonna take them over the edge? No, it's not. So
yeah, it's a step in the right direction, though. I think if they are looking to make further changes. All right, jcStani leaves Immortals, and leaves is the word there because he chose not to renew his contract once it got to the end of it.
Yeah,
and
ballsy.
Yeah, so that is a bit of a ballsy move, isn't it?
Yeah.
I like it, though. I like that he's betting on himself. He's an IGL, a proven support player. He can also play the Jett. He can also op. He's a very, very well-rounded player at the moment, and he's been good for pretty much the entirety of his career, too. He's been one of the better components. Is he part of the Mayfly effect on Immortals? Possible, but who knows?
I wanted to discuss that, but I guess it's kind of out the window now. I mentioned it last week. Like we should talk about Immortals because they've always had this issue, and there's been 2 consistent components, which are Gangsta and Stani. But I was interested to see how this Stani duelist theory would work out. I don't think it completely panned out. But that being said, when he had initially switched off of being the in-game leader and just got to focus on fragging and was playing Omen, he was nasty.
Yeah.
So I think he has a lot of value as a free agent.
Yeah,
there are a lot of teams
value.
out there who need supports that can also pop off. I mean, that is a crucial role in a team. There are 1,000,001 cracked out 15-year-old grinding duelists out there.
Yeah.
But if you can be a valuable support player who can also be a top fragger in a game, that is immense
Plus,
value. So.
Two other big things for jcStani, in my opinion. One, he's IGL'd before, and he's been pretty successful at it when he was doing it. You know, not the best in NA, but still successful enough. And two, he's worked with a lot of. He's always been part of systems where they start from square one and build up to something good. And that's really valuable experience if you're a free agent that's coming in as Dr. Valorant to fix a team, if we want to steal Wyatt's title.
Sure. Okay,
where
don't do that, but sure.
I could see
I get the
Stani.
point. Don't do that.
Okay, all right, sorry.
Only one
sorry.
doctor.
The nurse of Valorant, I guess. Yeah, all right, that can be Stani's job. Where I could see Stani coming into teams that are really struggling and don't have an IGL. TSM, we just talked about. If they were willing to do something like that, where he was given all of the authority in the team to restructure and make roster moves as he saw fit, to try and emulate a bit of a system that was in Immortals, to realize like what is really important to go from a mixture of random players to a team that can perform at a higher level. That's really useful experience to be able to take mixed squads and turn them into an actual team system. I think Stani is going to be a real solid free agent that people should be paying attention to. Could be added
I've
to
been the
a range of different
jcStani
rosters.
simp for a long time, and I have to. It's true. You could literally document it, and I feel like jcStani. I mean, it's hard not to
tier
find
3
him.
sub.
Yeah, I have the tier 3 emotes for jcStani, and I think it's hard to imagine not finding a team and being successful, because he's just a really well-rounded player overall, and like what he brings. Like there's just very few players. There's like no players on the market, honestly, that can bring something that jcStani could bring to a team that needs somebody.
He's a stud.
Yeah.
He's a stud.
Yes.
Yeah, he is.
I'm sure there's going to be more and more crazy roster shuffles as well within North America and in Europe. I mean, the rumors of the European ones are nuts as well to begin with, but there's going to be opportunities for Stani, and there's going to be more new teams formed and more free agents all over the place in the next few weeks.
I'm a little concerned for Immortals. The fact that one of their star players is leaving on his own will to go try to find other opportunities. And given their track record of how they're kind of just like letting people go left and right, giving to the other teams and stuff like that, like I don't really see the strategy for them long term.
They're a farm team.
I mean, I think honestly, I wouldn't be. I mean, I would imagine part of it for Stani as well, even though I don't think you mentioned it, but it's frustrating having to switch. They switch players constantly, especially when he was in-game leading. I know you'd mentioned the frustrations of that when we had him on the show, how tough it was. It's tough to in-game lead when you're switching players constantly.
Yeah.
And they continue to switch players constantly. And I mean, obviously this tells you that he wants to be on a team that can win. Win tournaments.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a great player. Wish him the best.
I'm sure there's going to be a fuck ton of shuffles happening in North America. We already actually talked pretty much about the Xeppaa poiz kind of swap when you were talking about Cloud9, but that's just a rumor at the moment that Xeppaa's going to take over from poiz. Apparently, Xeppaa in Sabrosa's chat was saying that it's quite likely that he's going to play for the next stage. Don't know whether that's going to happen. I think there is a discussion to be had here, though, about like poiz, to be honest, because even though the Cloud9 guys really believe in Xeppaa, Leaf in an interview recently said Zeppaa's going to be the best player in NA, and Leaf's already a fucking good player. So if he thinks he's going to be better than Leaf, that's not bad.
They have history. And Vanity also was hyping him up too. Like they have history, and that's good. Whereas a player like poiz is kind of left on his lonesome, an improvement everywhere, you know, like he's got a guy that came from ranked. He doesn't have history with a bunch of different players like that. Unfortunately, is how these things kind of go. But yeah, I'm scared as hell if Xeppaa joins Cloud or is actually replacing poiz on Cloud9. I think that is dirty. Xeppaa's always been impressive since his inception, really in Counter-Strike, through the rank G/FPL days and and then moving up to Chaos. Like, that's scary.
Yeah. And I do think that poiz has a ton of potential and will find success elsewhere as well. Like if they do end up replacing poiz, it's not because poiz is bad. I think it's just a factor of time, and he will end up being good, and he will get opportunities, and he will probably succeed in the future too.
Yeah.
I don't think it's an indictment of him.
I'm surprised if Immortals try to get him.
Sure.
Fit right in.
Yeah.
They need.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
all right, moving over to Europe, there is some wild shit going on in Europe, and we don't exactly know what the hell is happening. But RUBINO is like one of the only people to start this shuffle around, saying that he's split with Heretics. Do you guys know the like rumors and juice surrounding this?
No.
in regards to the moves to G2 from potential.
Well, there was
I know about G2.
There was the report about G2, right?
Yeah.
That they were trying to pick up players from Heretics. But there was a Spanish podcast that recently came out, which I can't speak Spanish, but I'm getting the like translations from the Spanish people that frequent my Twitch chat as well. That apparently there's been some internal conflict within Heretics, and like Lowell and RUBINO and then the rest of the team disagreed on the movement of the team going forward and like whether or not they should keep some of their coaching staff, and they've just internally split into two. And so they're planning to, I don't know, the rumors are that they're undergoing a bit of an implosion at the moment. Now, I will say that Tani apparently came out and denied that this was happening. So they are just purely rumors and speculation right now. But with the G2 report coming out that says they were looking to acquire Nuki and Avova from Heretics, and with RUBINO now saying that he's looking for different opportunities, and those rumors circulating about internal conflict within the team too, it seems likely that there is going to be some big movement within EU where these top teams are getting ripped apart, and it seems like G2 have first pickings at the dinner table.
G2
they're trying
to throw the cash around.
Right, and that's what's going to make it. That's what's going to make the difference, because there aren't that many big orgs at the moment in Europe who are willing to invest.
We're going to have a super team. It's going to be great. I mean, I'm like kind of, split about, having a super team in G2, because we were probably going to be poaching players from Ascend and Heretics from the report, but because those are the last champions, so that kind of hurts me. But having a super team in EU to compete against pretty much already, like from what I can tell, FPX, Liquid, Fnatic. Sorry, I won't. My bad, Wyatt. My bad. I won't put FPX.
Yeah, I put FPX there. Not supposed to talk about that.
But I think that will be really, really nice and fun to watch, and exciting and very good for the EU scene if that money gets spent.
Well, then it's a question too about what happens to Heretics if that's actually the case. Because like if they explode, like what does that roster look like moving forward? Do they do the G2 Heretic swap and they just swap a bunch of players back and forth? What if Artis is on Heretics? Something like that.
You could make a wacky Heretics team.
You really could.
I mean,
so
listen,
funny.
Lowell, Patatek.
Yeah, I mean, all of the players for Heretics are extremely good. Even if G2 got their best possible selections, they might not even be better than that Heretics team was.
Lowell, Patatek, Para, well, it's Artis.
Yeah, and I guess, RUBINO isn't with the team anymore, but you'd have to find some replacement for that. But like the former Heretics team was nasty, nasty good. And yeah, I mean, there's just so much talent. And if the entire EU scene is undergoing a shuffle right now, it's kind of insane. I'm also amazed that a team like Heretics wants to make this move when they already had points for champions.
Yes. That was exactly like they literally already have points at the like second place in VCT, like in terms of or Masters 1.
Well,
so they should be up at the top.
They're going to be in fourth place, because even if Liquid and Fnatic bomb out immediately, they still get 150 points, which means Heretics would be in fourth. But still, I mean, I feel like you want to keep that core of the team together to try and.
You also have to remember Gambit will be up there. Gambit will be past them as well, and maybe some of the maybe the Turkish teams as well.
Yeah, maybe. Oh yeah, that's fair enough then. Fair enough.
So like they're getting fucked. They're fucking themselves. And G2 has nothing, by the way. They have no points.
Yeah, but I think if you're in a position where in Heretics' position where you're like, should we just try and be consistent throughout the year and use that to get into champions? I think these guys have bigger aspirations. They're like, fuck it. If we win Masters 3, we just stamp our ticket straight there. You just get in. So you want to peak towards the end of the year. You don't just want to kind of muddle your way through and bank on that. So I can understand this perspective.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Wild
I mean, do we
times
think
ahead.
that G2 team would be the super team if it got made?
Mixwell, Pith, Nuki, Avova,
Coldamenta.
and Coldamenta. I think that team might be worse than Heretics was.
I thought you were gonna say better.
No, I
agree.
seriously,
I don't think
like,
it's much of a super team.
It doesn't
think-
seem like a super team. It seems like a team that's got the potential to be as good as all of the teams are at the top in the EU right now. It's got the potential to work much better than G2 did, but it's not. I don't think that team is going to dominate the scene. You know,
Especially because you bring in an IGL from a completely different team. Like he has no friends in that team.
Yeah,
you know?
and Coldamenter is good, and he's showcased that as well. But it's not like he's been proven over a huge amount of time. They had one tournament where they performed extraordinarily well, and their coach was in the comms with them too. By the way,
If they got I don't know.
Coldamenter looks good, but he's not a boaster or an angel where they've had success over a sustained period of time. Now he might not have the downsides of an angel, but I don't know, man. It doesn't look like a super team to me. It just looks like, fuck, this is cool.
You're missing the peaks. It's Olaf Meister. It's coming from CS.
Olaf Meister coming in. Yeah, that's gonna be
That's
it.
gonna be nasty.
Could happen. And the last piece of the puzzle as well, or not the last piece of the puzzle, but the last thing to mention this week is that Alliance have also benched kAdavraa, apparently, or kAdavra's left for another team, or fuck knows what's happening in Europe right now. And is anyone paying attention to Alliance? kAdavraa was good.
Now that's a good question. Now that's the real question.
kAdavraa was good. He could be he could be a name to watch out for if he goes to a better team. But is Alliance going to be spending the money to be involved in these shuffles at a high level? I don't know. I don't know which orgs are really
I'm not
invested.
sure.
At this point, it's just a crapshoot as to what, from the outside, like, I bet the journalists who are working in the scene, like fucking Nell and the guy George who does journalists and stuff,
Oh,
they must be losing
also,
their
this
goddamn
just
minds.
came out too, by the way, Josh. NIP are looking at potential replacements for JD.
For JD?
For JD. It
So
just
that-
came out from
I mean, that
Upcomer.
must mean that JD's going somewhere better as well, right? Because JD was a fucking beast when he was playing with
I'm
NIP.
just saying they're looking at potential replacements for JD from Upcomer. Came out from literally like 30 minutes ago.
Who is that report from?
Upcomer.
George Gads again.
It's George, right? Yeah, I can never remember his
He's-
surname, but
he's
that
in
guy's
there, bro. He's in the fucking EU
that guy is
scene.
deep in the juice in the European scene as well. It's a good time to look at what's going on, man, because the European scene is gonna look so different. It's just bizarre.
I mean, it has
and it's
to
not
be.
like NA where it's bad teams trying to get better. It's good teams that are like, fuck it, we're not literally winning, and therefore we must create a super team.
Apparently they're saying that the replacement has already likely been found, and JD's just out.
Okay, that's
They say they were
wild.
practicing
Surely.
without JD.
But that must
So-
mean that JD's going somewhere better. They haven't cut JD, surely, because JD was
Unless there's just some internal problem we don't
Sure.
know about. But
might be a comms issue or something.
I mean, it was
Fuck
a
knows.
nasty player.
Wyatt, give me your weekly award, bro. Give me your weekly award.
Okay.
Dude, it's so dark in here. I can't see anything. What is that glowing? Oh. It's Wyatt's weekly award.
The spin into the distance.
Yeah. You know, an apt weekly award with the green glow. Because this week, the weekly award goes to none other than Viper, the agent from Valorant.
Okay.
The agent.
So a good color scheme. Yep, and there's Viper in Valorant.
Doing science.
New map leak. But I had to give it to Viper this week, honestly, because Viper has just clearly been the most influential aspect of the actual Valorant gameplay this week.
Sure.
To me, Viper is just damn good. Some may say too good.
Yeah. Is she good in a good way for the game, or is she good in a bad way for the game?
I might say the latter. but regardless of all that, I mean, yeah, I think Viper was unbelievably influential as to the results that we witnessed over the week. Don't have to go to Viper. She did a hell of a job winning games all over the place.
She really did.
So
Class
the
it up.
weekly
I mean,
award.
she could be nice short term, right? I feel like if Viper stays like this for a long time, it's an issue. But seeing the cycle of balance for Valorant, I'm confident that Riot will probably adjust her.
Is it a good time for like your biggest ever international event? All eyes on the game. Over 500k viewers are predicted for it, and you've got double Viper walls, Astra smokes are popping all over the place. It feels like
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why, because people fucking love Viper, man. They fucking
Really?
love her no matter what. Yeah,
Viper's
picked. We got Viper.
Viper's like the Reaper of Valorant, you know? It's like I love the Viper lady because she's got
it's fucking
cool
Viper
wall.
Sideshow.
that's not what I look like. That's not eyeshadow, mascara, and a bald head. That's what you think I look like.
Yeah, dude, that's what. No, that's how you look when you go to the club. That's what you try to.
Yeah,
that's the makeup you do when you're going out. I've seen it before.
You get your eyebrows threaded. You get some mascara on.
I've seen that before. I've seen that look.
God, I am ready to go out as well. God damn. I mean, just a smaller side. I'm fucking ready to paint the town.
I mean, I went to Korean barbecue the other day with my roommates because now we're all fully vaccinated, and I finally that was the first time I've been in a restaurant in like
I haven't been in a restaurant in so long. I haven't been in
like
a restaurant
literally
in
a year and a half or
yeah.
something.
Fuck.
Good,
I mean,
good
it's
thing
probably
for
all just gonna be
science.
outdoor seating here anyway, but whatever.
Yeah.
By the way, where the hell? I need to know the story behind you having a science award. Why? Like,
I mean, it's just.
He just requested it.
Yeah, it's just
It's also,
science.
it's got a fucking genie lamp on it. That's the opposite. That's the antithesis of science. That is myth and legend. That is spiritualism. That is not science.
Well, I mean, maybe a genie could be. It's a science we don't understand yet, Josh. Think about that one.
And with those wise words, we close episode 43. Thank you, Avast, for always being the philosopher on the show.
That's me. Yep, that's what they call me.
But
The
this
modern philosopher.
he's our pocket genie.
Before we go, what do they comment?
Oh,
in the
what do they
comments?
comment? I don't know. I don't know what they comment. I want to see. Okay, how about this? I want to see if you could create a super team from NA and EU out of the people you think are going to get roster shuffled. So leave aside the teams that have gone to Iceland. The other teams want to make the best possible rosters in NA and EU. Who's your super team? If you're an NA fan, give me one with fucking, I don't know, Hiko and who else?
Who is AZK?
Yeah, and I don't fucking know who else is good. Yeah, Brax and AZK in it.
Tarek.
Yeah.
Tarek, Hiko, Brax, AZK.
And if you're an EU fan, give me a team with CNED and Nucky and a bunch of other people in it, right? Huh? There you go. You have to go and do that. And when you come back, we'll have another back chat for you on Wednesday, and we will also be doing previews. The next week, we're going to be doing Brazil and Korea and LATAM and shit like that. So we'll see you then. Bye.